Chapter 2970. To lay murderous intentions in the dark. At this moment, Yi Xian was extremely depressed. The great surprise of accidentally obtaining a Starry Sky Supreme Treasure Super Life Fortress had long since dissipated. What replaced it was a huge sense of loss, as well as a strong sense of depression. Her life was too tough. She was clearly on the verge of becoming a nanny. Previously, he was looking for the multi-pupil thought crystal that could help the immortal rank cosmic superbrain fragment grow. Now, he had to look for the energy that could help the world bug colony that had evolved into a 5,000-meter-wide fortress to recover its normal reproduction and evolution. More importantly, even Yi Xian had no idea what this energy was. Furthermore, he was absolutely certain that all the resources he currently had were absolutely useless. What kind of existence was Xingbo? Tens of thousands of years ago, he had already tried all the resources that he could find. The things in Yi Xian's hands might just be a drop in the bucket of all the resources that he had already tried. In short, trying to find this mysterious energy whose name was unknown was like looking for a needle in a haystack. It was even more difficult than Yi Xian looking for the source of Devouring, which had become the currency of the system. At the very least, the latter had a name. At the very least, Yi Xian had come into contact with it before, used it before, and knew what it looked like. However, Yi Xian had no idea what kind of energy the world worm's source of evolution required and what kind of state it was in. The only way was to try out every new resource that he obtained in the future. It was clearly a case of treating a dead horse as a living horse. It was purely a matter of luck. Because of this, even through the devouring system, Yi Xian already knew that the core of the Longyi Life Fortress, which was the source of evolution that was equivalent to the core of the entire world's bugs, was actually hidden in a secret location on the second floor of the Life Fortress. However, Yi Xian did not have the interest to immediately search for it and research it. After all, no matter how he researched it, he could not awaken it from its half-dormant state and brand it with a soul brand to make it recognize him as its master. What else was there to do? Thinking of this, Yi Xian was gloomy for a while, but he quickly threw this matter to the back of his mind. Then, he began to think about the matter of killing Zhou Liqing, and Zhou Hongwu's uncle and nephew. This matter had to be done on the way back to the Black Mosquito Star. Otherwise, it would be difficult to find another opportunity after returning. As for the other failed trial takers with them, as well as the more than 4,000 demon powerhouses on the fierce Mosquito Star, Yi Xian did not intend to spare them. Yi Xian also didn't plan on letting any of them go. Coincidentally, the demon cultivator's brain core in his hand had already been used up, so he could only use the Weeping Soul Beast to absorb spiritual energy. However, the Weeping Soul Beast was a long river, and although the process of slowly absorbing spiritual energy was very comfortable, it was still boring after drinking too much of the porridge. Absorbing the spirit origin energy from the demon dweller's brain was like drinking strong wine. A large amount of spirit origin energy instantly poured into his sea of consciousness. That taste TSK. I haven't tried it for a long time. Sometimes I do miss it a little. However, if they wanted to kill Zhou Liqing, they naturally couldn't rely on the Wild Dragon battleship, which had stopped evolving and was still far from fully maturing. Therefore, its performance was basically average. In fact, even if they were to return to the Black Mosquito Star, Yi Xian didn't expect to rely on it. As such, he immediately called for Hao Fangfang. After the two of them walked out of the Wild Dragon ship, Yi Xian immediately took out the Dongshu shuttle. After sending the confused Hao Fangfang into the shuttle, he immediately waved his hand and kept this temporarily unusable Starry Sky treasure, Great Super Life Fortress, into his undying world. Yi Xian hadn't branded this Wild Dragon battleship with a strand of his soul into the World Worm's evolution crystal, and made it recognize him as its master. It was as if he had completely refined it. However, the devouring system had already infiltrated this crystal, and purposely exposed it to confuse him. It was the same as an ordinary space fortress's main control center. He had also taken over the control center's ultimate authority, which was equivalent to completing the initial refinement. Therefore, Yi Xian could easily keep this Wild Dragon battleship into his undying world like he did with the Black Mosquito Star and Black Wind battleship. After that, Yi Xian stepped into the Dongshu shuttle and brought out 1,000 mosquito beasts and 1,000 soldier ladles. Among the 2,000 beasts there were 200 of them from the 4th realm, the planet realm, to the 8th realm, the black hole realm. In addition, Yixian also brought out the 8-star Wang ladle, who was at the mid-stage of the origin realm. As for Gui Hai Dao and his 1,000 demon slaves, who were also stationed in the Dongshu shuttle, Yixian didn't use them. They were too weak and weren't suitable for this kind of intergalactic battle. As for the wretched mosquito slayer, it was naturally even more impossible. Ever since Yixian discovered that there was something wrong with him, he had been secretly wary of him. He couldn't possibly let him participate in such a big matter. When he had the time later, he would have to deal with him properly. After the Mosquito Beast Soldier Ladle Squad, an 8-star Wang ladle walked out of the Dongshu shuttle. Yixian quickly put the Dongshu shuttle back into his undying world with a wave of his hand. Then, he directly brought out the Black Mosquito Star and Black Wind battleships. Inside the Black Mosquito Star and Black Wind battleships were an army of 10 million mosquito beasts and 100,000 soldier ladles. Among the 10 million mosquito beasts, there were more than 10,000 Black Hole Realm mosquitoes. Among the 100,000 soldier ladles, there were nearly 1,000 Black Hole Realm 7-star ladles. These tens of thousands of mosquitoes and nearly 1,000 7-star general ladles were all summoned by Yixian, along with the ones that had been transferred out from the Void Cave shuttle. Because they would have to move them frequently in the future, they specially mobilized all of them this time to refine their weapons. According to Yixian's instructions, the 1,000 mosquito beasts and the 1,000 soldier ladles quickly dispersed into the surrounding space. Moreover, he immediately concealed his figure, restrained his aura, and silently lay dormant. Afterwards, Yixian gave battle orders to the Black Mosquito's demon slave Chief Barker, as well as the other demon slave Vice Chief Barker, who was personally selected by Barker, who was in charge of the Black Wind, including his entire battle plan and final goal. In the end, the two bastions also sailed to the locations indicated by Yixian. They quickly began the process of recharging the Superstar Destroyer cannon. At the same time, they activated the concealment formation and disappeared in an instant. In the blink of an eye, the void fell into silence again. Everything seemed to be the same as usual, but in fact, Yixian's arrangements had already turned the void into an absolute killing zone. Yixian chose this place to set up an ambush because it was the closest natural wormhole to the Demon Emperor planet on the way back to the Black Mosquito Star Zone. If the stellar-level battleship of Zuolicheng and Zhuanggu wanted to perform a long-distance space jump, it had to come here and enter the wormhole. Chapter 2971. Translator. Nyobo Studio Editor. Nyobo Studio prey comes to the doors Zuolicheng, and Zhuanggu gritted their teeth in anger at Yixian's departure. They could not accept the fact that Yixian was already so arrogant even before he had become the Black Mosquito tribe's holy son. However, in the end, Zuolicheng and Zhuanggu didn't plan on carrying the tattered little fortress that Yixian had chosen back to the Black Mosquito tribe. It wouldn't be worth it if it fell apart halfway. As far as they were concerned, this matter was purely due to Yixian's desire for face. Although Zuolicheng and Zhuanggu were extremely angry, after thinking about it for a moment, they became happy again. This brat had no one to blame but himself for seeking death. Originally, he was worried that he wouldn't be able to find a reasonable excuse to get rid of him openly, but now he had presented this opportunity to him on a silver platter. The space fortress was a public property given to the Black Mosquito tribe by the Devil Emperor Mo Wentian. However, Yixian was the one who handled the matter. Because of his personal reasons, the Black Mosquito tribe finally got a battered little fortress that could not be seen at all. It would be a laughingstock if it was shown to the public. Under such circumstances, not only would General Zhuangtai, the great commander of the Black Mosquito tribe, be enraged, even High Priest Hui Gulei, who had always been at odds with Zhuangtai, would be enraged. If it had been before, High Priest Hui Gulei, in order to continue holding the Black Mosquito tribe's Holy Sun's authority, would have tried to win him over even if Zhang Wuji, who had won the Holy Sun trial, did not have much ability. This was to prevent the Black Mosquito tribe's Holy Sun position from falling into the hands of Zhuangtai's faction. If that happened, Hui Gulei, who had always held a superior position in the Black Mosquito tribe, would lose the slight advantage he had over Zhuangtai's faction. However, this Zhang Wuji was courting death. He had caused the Black Mosquito tribe to suffer such a huge loss for his own sake. It was almost a humiliation. In this case, Grayskull Ray would no longer be biased towards him. After all, this was related to the tribe's reputation. Grayskull Ray was the High Priest after all. He obviously couldn't ignore this factor completely. If there were no accidents, as long as Zhang Wuji returned to the Black Mosquito Star with the broken fortress, Zhuofengtai and Hui Gulei would definitely go on a rampage after learning about the situation, and the latter would most likely not stop them. This was clearly a heaven-sent opportunity to kill Zhang Wuji in public. However, with that guy's glib tongue, if he was allowed to return to the Black Mosquito Star first and spout nonsense, he might be able to reverse the situation that was almost set in stone. It was precisely because of this that Zhuo Liqing and Zhuo Honggu, as uncle and nephew, were suddenly anxious to return home. Therefore, Yi Xian drove the Long Yi battleship out of Demon Guard Yi's star dock and into the void of the universe. Not long after it was gone, Zhuo Liqing and Zhuo Honggu, who realized that something was wrong, immediately stepped into the 3,000-meter-long stellar-level battleship that Zhuofengtai had given to the latter. They rushed toward the first natural wormhole that was closest to the Demon Emperor planet on the long journey to the Black Mosquito Star area. At this moment, the uncle and nephew were sitting on the sofa in the main cabin of the Fengtung battleship. They were drinking wine and chatting happily. In their opinion, although Zhang Wuji had set off one step ahead of them, and the battleship he was piloting was still a battleship. Even if it was only a 5,000-meter-long battleship with a shabby appearance, it was still a battleship. Not to mention other aspects, its speed and space-jumping ability were definitely not comparable to an ordinary stellar-level battleship. But in fact, the uncle and nephew were not worried about this at all. The so-called Long Yi battleship was already damaged, and the Fengtung battleship they were on now was not an ordinary stellar-level battleship. Even if Zhang Wuji could reach the Star Mosquito Star before them, it would not be much earlier. At most, it would only be half a day. In such a short period of time, he believed that the Black Mosquito Tribe's Grand Commanders Zhuofengtai and the High Priest Hui Gulei would not be so easily fooled by him and conclude the matter of the Wild Dragon ship. It would be a little embarrassing if they were to turn the tables around after the fact. Zhuo Honggu was still very confident about this. After all, this Fengtung battleship was privately obtained by his brothers Zhuofengtai from the Demon Dweller Star area at a great cost. Not only could it perform long-distance space jumping like a battleship, but it also used the perfect space-folding technology of the Tianji tribe inside the battleship. Although the battleship looked like a stellar-level battleship with a length of only 3,000 meters, in fact, the interior space was very large. It could accommodate at least 10,000 demon dwellers. Right now, there were 6,000 to 7,000 demon dwellers in the Fengtung battleship, and its speed was much faster than an ordinary stellar-level battleship. In just 6 hours, the first wormhole in the star area was in front of them. Zhuo Honggu immediately gave an order to his sidekick. He turned around and said, "Go to the main control room and inform them to do the last pre-inspection of the wormhole. If there is no problem, immediately start charging the jump shield of the battleship. After entering the wormhole in front of us, the first thing to do is to jump." The sidekick nodded. Just as he turned around, the entire Fengtung battleship suddenly shook violently without warning. It was like a small boat sailing on a raging sea. Caught off guard, the sidekick fell to the ground. Before he could get up, his face had already changed in horror. He cried out in alarm. "What's going on? Could it be that we have encountered space turbulence?" This situation was very similar to when a battleship was sailing in the universe and suddenly accidentally entered a chaotic space turbulence. This was also the reason why this lackey had suddenly turned pale with fright and actually cried out in alarm on the spot. Space turbulence was very dangerous. Once one was sucked into it, there was basically no hope of coming out safely. Even if one was lucky enough to rush out of the turbulence area, the entire warship would probably not be much different from being torn apart. Even the alloy battleship was like this, then there was no need to mention the flesh and blood creatures in the cabin. Damn it, this is not space turbulence. This is clearly caused by the space oscillator. Chapter 2972. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations. The Black Mosquito's Wahongwu's guess was correct. It was Yi Xian's handiwork that caused his Fengtung stellar-level battleship to tremble so much. As for the space fortresses that emitted this kind of spatial vibration, they were naturally the Black Mosquito and the Black Wind. At this moment, as the space oscillator was fully activated, the Black Mosquito and Black Wind, which had activated their concealment formations, were instantly exposed. This was one of the major drawbacks of the space oscillator. Although this method could trap the target battleship, it would not be able to perform a space jump, even if it was only a short distance. In the void of the star field where the space was disturbed and the amplitude of the space oscillation was greatly increased, the target battleship's normal navigation would be affected. Even if it could still move forward, its speed would be greatly reduced and it would be very bumpy. Under such circumstances, it was very easy to be ambushed. Unfortunately, the terrifying effect of this space oscillator was also a double-edged sword. While trapping the target warship, the warships on his side, including the warship that released the space oscillation force, would also be affected within the area covered by the invisible shockwave. However, because the battleship that caused the space oscillation was the source of the space oscillation would radiate out from there. Within the effective range, the further the space oscillation was, the stronger the effect would be. Therefore, the battleship that caused the space oscillation would be less affected than the target battleship. However, no matter how slight the effect was, it was impossible for the target battleship to maintain its concealment state. This problem had troubled some experts in the human race's science and technology for many years, but they had not been able to solve it. Even the Tianji clan, which was far more talented than the human race in science and technology, had not been able to solve this problem. Because of this, as the effect of the space oscillator appeared, the Black Mosquito and the Black Wind, which had been in a hidden state, were immediately exposed without any suspense. But this didn't matter because the target they were lying in ambush for, the Fengtung ship, had been firmly trapped within an expanse of space that was around 50 kilometers in diameter at this moment. Not to mention being unable to move, it was absolutely impossible for it to maintain a normal sailing speed at least. Black Wind and Black Mosquito were the two bastions, and the area of influence had been predetermined before they activated their space oscillators. Of course, a distance of 100 kilometers was the limit of what a bastion could cover. If the void of the Milky Way was considered as a huge circle, then the Fengtung ship, which was trapped in this huge circle, was right in the center of the circle. The Black Mosquito ship and the Black Wind ship were facing each other at the edge of the giant circle. They were about 50 miles away from the Bountiful Tongue ship, which was exactly the radius of the giant circle. A distance of 50 miles was considered quite a distance on the ground. However, in the boundless void of the universe, it was really nothing. Without a reference and no obstacles, it was empty as far as the eye could see. Under these circumstances, not to mention 50 miles, even 100 or 100 miles would feel very close. At least from the Fengtung ship, which was in the center of the huge circle, ordinary masters could easily see the Black Wind ship and the Black Mosquito ship, which were hovering far away in the void on both sides of the huge circle and were eyeing them fiercely. After the initial panic, Zhuangguo and Zuolicheng quickly regained their composure. Even the warship crew on the Fengtung battleship quickly calmed down and took various countermeasures at once. Even the star cannons on the Fengtung battleship had been activated to the high-speed charging mode. While the Bountiful Tongue ship was preparing for war, Zhuangguo and Zuolicheng were still in the main cabin on the top floor of the Bountiful Tongue ship. They were observing the situation around the Bountiful Tongue ship through a huge 5-dimensional holographic screen. There was no doubt that the Black Mosquito ship and the Black Wind ship were so close to each other in the empty void of the universe. Anyone who wasn't blind would be able to see them at first glance. As a result, Zhuangguo's expression suddenly changed again, and he immediately exclaimed in disbelief, "What? Isn't that the Black Mosquito ship? What's going on?" "What? Black Mosquito ship? It can't be, right? Second uncle, don't be kidding." Zuolicheng was startled by Zhuangguo's exclamation. Almost subconsciously, he directly denied this possibility. As he muttered, he followed Zhuangguo's dazed gaze and looked in the other direction of the huge virtual screen in front of him. The next moment, Zuolicheng also opened his mouth wide and was completely dumbfounded on the spot. He only felt that there was a buzzing noise in his head, and he was completely stupefied. Although the Black Mosquito cruiser was one of the 10 bastions of the Demonkin Scout Corps and rarely returned to the First Universe for many years, both Zhuangguo and Zuolicheng had met them once when it first arrived at the demonic mosquito planet and took away the former Black Mosquito cruiser's leader, Naibuishan, and his 10,000 Demonkin scouts, who were in charge of receiving and commanding this bastion. Although it was only once, the Black Mosquito ship had a huge pattern of a ferocious black mosquito beast engraved on the outer wall of the fortress ship. Therefore, even after so many years, The uncle and nephew still recognized it at a glance. And they were very sure that it was the Black Mosquito ship, even though they didn't have the slightest doubt. But this didn't make sense. The Black Mosquito ship was clearly still at the frontier of the third universe, which was ruled by the human clan of the Wanluo Federation. How could it suddenly return to the first universe? What's more, even if it did come back, it would hide outside the wormhole and activate the concealment array. When the bountiful Tengale arrived, it would immediately activate the space oscillator. What was the meaning of this? These thoughts flashed through the minds of Zhuangguo and Zuoliqing almost like lightning. Vaguely, they both had an extremely bad feeling, as if something big had happened. In the end, it was Zhuangguo who was more astute. After being stunned for only a dozen seconds, he seemed to suddenly understand something. His face changed again and he exclaimed, "No! Zhang Wuji is a problem. The Black Mosquito ship is lying in ambush here. It must be his idea. How could a little meteor realm cultivator have such an ability? This is bad. The secret army of the human clan of the third universe has quietly sneaked into the Demon Star area. And even the Black Mosquito ship has fallen." Chapter 2973. Translator. Hinyi Translations Editor. Hinyi Translations, who the hell are you? This is not good. There's a bastion here. My God, who the hell is watching us? This can't be the kid surnamed Zhang. Just when Zhuangguo was horrified, he immediately issued an order to ask for help from the demonic Imperial Star. Then, his henchmen immediately turned around and rushed to the central control room of the Bountiful Tongue ship. Behind him, another henchman of the demon dweller suddenly screamed without warning. Not only was his face full of shock, but he also raised his hand and pointed in another direction of the huge virtual screen. This huge 5-dimensional virtual screen almost surrounded the entire top floor of the Bountiful Tongue battleship. It was a 3-dimensional all-around display of the void outside the cabin. Although Zhuangguo saw the Black Mosquito just now, he didn't have time to turn around and look at the virtual screen behind him, so he didn't know about the Black Wind. It was only when he heard the devil's shocked cry that he and Zuoliqing turned to look in that direction out of conditioned reflex. In the next moment, the expressions of this pair of uncle and nephew changed drastically without any suspense. Zhuangguo immediately screamed in despair. The Black Wind? It's actually the Black Wind. My God! What the hell happened? Is the entire demonic army in a trap? Otherwise, how could the Black Wind appear here? Who the hell is that kid Zhang Wuji? Although Zhuangguo hadn't seen this bastion before, he still recognized it at a glance. The demonic army had a total of 10 bastions. Nominally, these 10 bastions belonged to the 10 major tribes, but in fact, the masters inside the bastions and the tens of thousands of demonic army soldiers were all recruited from the 10 major tribes of the demonic army. However, the administrative control of these bastions had nothing to do with their respective tribes. They were only under the command of the leader of the demonic army. This leader was Bachai from the Black Wind tribe. The Black Wind tribe had always been the most powerful tribe among the 10 foreign tribes of the demonic tribe. Among the 10 demon tribes' holy sons, only the one from the Black Wind tribe had inherited a secret skill of spiritual power when he first entered the Demon Saint Forbidden area to undergo the Black Wind tribe's holy son's trial. Although this reflected his personal talent in spiritual power, it also reflected the strength of the Black Wind tribe. Because of this, the commander of the entire demon army was chosen from the Black Wind tribe. The reason Zhuangguo was able to recognize Black Wind at a glance, even though he'd never seen it before, was simple. The outer walls of each of the 10 bastions were engraved with the image of a savage beast. Each of these beasts represented a tribe of demon kin. Just as the Black Mosquito's hull bore the image of a giant black mosquito, the Black Wind's hull bore the image of a ferocious Black Wind beast. Although Zhuangguo had never seen it with his own eyes, he had at least heard of it. Therefore, he recognized the Black Wind at a glance. Boom! Boom! Zhuangguo's despairing words had barely left his mouth when his vision was filled with a large amount of bright silver light. The giant 3D virtual screen that surrounded the main hall of the soaring warship's top floor burst into a dazzling white light. A giant energy beam about 500 meters in diameter was shooting from the Black Wind bastion at an unimaginable speed. Not only the Black Wind, but the Black Mosquito on the other side also shot out a giant energy beam of the same size at the same time. This was clearly the superstar obliterating cannon on a 10,000-meter-long galaxy-class bastion, firing at full power. Its power was so terrifying that it could easily shatter a small meteor. Such a terrifying destructive power was not something an ordinary battleship could withstand, at least not this soaring warship. Even if it was an enhanced version of a special battleship that was close to the highest grade. Not to mention the fact that there were two terrifying superstar destroyer cannons attacking from the front and back. Even if there was only one, the rising tongue ship was like a swamp right now. There was no way for it to use its speed or space jump to avoid the attack. The final outcome was already decided. The moment the soaring warship's hull was hit by the two superstar obliterating cannons, the destruction of the soaring warship would come at the same time as the disintegration of the entire battleship. And this moment was not far away. To be more precise, it was already in front of them, perhaps in the next second. Zhang Wuji, I'm not done with you. As his expression changed, Zhuanggu let out a miserable roar with a ferocious expression. At the same time, he reached out to grab Zhuo Liqing, who was beside him. Before the latter could react, and before he could even finish his miserable roar, which was full of resentment, his figure disappeared in an instant. Facing these two destructive energy beams, Zhuanggu was certain that the Fengtong ship under his feet would not be able to survive. Therefore, even though he was unwilling, he still took Zhuo Liqing and escaped from the Fengtong ship at the first possible moment due to his strong desire to survive. Although the soaring warship was 3,000 meters long, and the two superstar obliterating cannons were only 500 meters in diameter, this kind of tearing would not completely destroy the soaring warship. Therefore, even if the soaring warship was destroyed, some of the demon experts inside would still be able to survive. Unfortunately, this probability was not ideal. Of the 6,000 to 7,000 demon cultivators in the soaring warship, it would be good enough if 1,000 could survive. Zhuanggu naturally would not bet on this kind of luck. Therefore, abandoning the soaring warship was his only choice. Screech! Rumble! Almost as soon as Zhuanggu and the pale-faced Zhuo Liqing appeared in the void not far from the cabin of the Fengtong ship, an earth-shattering boom was heard from the Fengtong ship several miles away. At this moment, blazing flames soared into the sky, illuminating most of the void. In addition, mixed with this huge explosion, there was also an incomparably ferocious howl coming from the front. Zhuanggu and his nephew subconsciously turned their heads to look, and what they saw immediately made them scream again. Oh my God, where did so many mosquito beasts come from? And are they all void-swallowing beasts? Oh my God. Zhang Wuji, it's really you. You have two origin-state ferocious beasts with you. Who are you? In the distance, the army of mosquito beasts and ladle soldiers, who had been hiding their auras, revealed themselves at this moment and surrounded them from all directions. As for Yi Xian, he was standing on the back of the ladle emperor with his hands behind his back. Behind him, the mosquito prince Xuebin's aura surged. Chapter 2974. Translator. Hinyi Translations Editor. Hinyi translations leave no one alive. Rumble. Rumble. As the Black Mosquito ship and the Black Wind ship were bombarded by the superstar destroyer cannons, the 3,000-meter-long Fengtong ship was blown into 3 pieces in an instant. The 2 pieces of the ship that were hit by the superstar destroyer cannons were almost vaporized. Apparently, the demon dwellers who were in this part of the ship were also vaporized. At the same time, the surviving demon dwellers fled out of the gaps in the wreckage of the Fengtong ship. Their faces were filled with fear, and some of them were even screaming. They were obviously scared out of their wits. After the survivors rushed out of the Fengtong ship, they immediately scattered. Their only thought was to leave this place as soon as possible. They didn't care about anything else. Originally, there were 6,000 or 7,000 demon dwellers. Now there were only about 4,000 left. They were like stray dogs running for their lives. They didn't have the slightest desire to fight. Unfortunately, these demon dwellers were destined to die here today. Their bones would be buried in this quiet void. Screech! Whoosh! Along with the endless ferocious roars, the mosquito beasts and the ladle soldiers in the void began to move. With ferocious expressions, they pounced on the fleeing demon dwellers. A fierce battle unfolded in an instant. To be more precise, this was clearly a one-sided slaughter. Thousands of demon dwellers' blood splattered in the void. Yi Xian had made it clear before. This time, none of the living things in the target ship would be left alive. Since the Black Mosquito ship and the Black Wind ship had been exposed, this was Yixian's only choice. There was no room for negotiation. At this moment, with the arrival of the mosquito beasts and the army of ladles that had been lying in ambush in the air, Yixian, who was standing on the back of the 8-star ladle, had already arrived in front of Zuolicheng and Zhuangguo. He expressionlessly looked at the pair of uncle and nephew from a distance of about a mile. Behind him, except for the mosquito beast Prince Shueben, who was hovering in the void and flapping his blood-red wings from time to time, there was no one else. All the mosquito beasts and the ladle soldiers had pounced on the terrified demon dwellers. Who are you? Why did you betray the demon dwellers and work for the human dwellers of the third universe? Zhuangguo had already begun to tremble uncontrollably from the moment Yixian appeared. Even the words that he braced himself to ask Yixian were clearly trembling. He was really scared, terrified. Although the man and the two beasts seemed to be alone on the surface, they were incomparable to the army of ferocious beasts that pounced on the demon dwellers just now. But in fact, whether it was the huge void-swallowing beast on the back of Yixian like a mount or the blood-red mosquito beast floating behind it, they could kill him with a raise of their hands. There was no room for resistance. Zhuangguo was well aware of this. He also knew that he would not be able to escape death today. Since the other party had taken the initiative to expose such a shocking secret from the beginning, it was natural that he would not leave anyone alive. But even if he had to die, Zhuangguo did not want to die in such a sullen manner. He was indeed powerless to resist, and did not want to resist. At this moment, the only reason he asked Yixian with unwillingness was that he could know Yixian's true identity before he died. Even if he died, he had to know. You can call me Yixian. It seems that you have more or less guessed the truth. Shrugging his shoulders, Yixian lightly said, That's right, these two space fortresses no longer belong to your demon race. However, you guessed wrong when it came to selling your life for the human race. Because I am the human dwellers you are talking about. After saying that, Yixian waved his hand disinterestedly. Go, remember to cut out the brain nucleus. It is full of pure spiritual origin energy. The last sentence was obviously directed at the mosquito beast prince, Shueben, who was floating behind him. Screech. The latter obviously understood. He immediately let out a shrill cry, and with a flap of his wings, his entire body turned into a stream of blood-red brilliance and shot out at extreme speed. Yixian, however, turned around and swept toward the black mosquito in the distance. From beginning to end, he did not even look at Zuolicheng, who was hiding behind Zhuangguo and was obviously scared out of his wits. He treated him like air and ignored him. At this moment, as Yixian turned around and left, Zuolicheng, who had been in fear all this time, suddenly realized that the final moment had come. At this moment, even his body, which was trembling like a sieve because of the great fear, returned to normal. The fear in his eyes disappeared, and his eyes, which were fixed on Yixian's back, were full of endless resentment, despair, and unwillingness. He raised his head and let out a mournful roar. Unfortunately, this howl that seemed to be the final cry of life seemed to be so short, and it had just started howling when it came to an abrupt stop. As Shueben, who was so fast that he almost turned into a stream of blood-red light, arrived in an instant, Zhuangguo and Zuolicheng's heads almost flew into the sky at the same time. At this moment, the last thought that flashed through the uncle and nephew's minds was surprisingly the same. The warning signal to the Demon Emperor planet for help should have been successfully sent out. In less than 10 minutes, everything had come to an end. Thousands of demons were all killed, just as Yixian had instructed. Not a single one was left. After the battle, the mosquito beasts and the army of soldiers first gathered all the corpses of the demons and piled them into a small mountain of flesh and blood. At the same time, Yixian took out his own battle weapon, and let the demon blood sword spirit contained in the demon bloodstar tear's sword wantonly absorb the essence of qi and blood. In the end, the entire mountain of flesh and blood turned into a withered corpse. At the same time, the mosquito beasts and the army of soldiers immediately returned to the black wind and the black mosquito. As for the brains that were cut out from the brains of the demons, they were gathered together and handed over to Yixian. In total, there were more than 4,000, including the brains of Zuolicheng and Zhuangguo. Unfortunately, even if they were all absorbed in one go, The spiritual origin power contained in the brains of these 4,000 demons was far from enough to allow Yixian's spiritual origin core to transform and evolve again. After all, it would be a 7th grade source core if it were to transform again. Among the entire demon race, only the demon emperor Mo Tian had reached this level. It was obviously not easy. As he thought of this, Yixian sighed faintly and put all the demon cores into a small space box, which he then kept in his undying world. Chapter 2975. Meteor 5th Order Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Yixian didn't know that Zhuanggu had sent a distress signal to the demonic emperor planet as soon as he saw the Black Mosquito spaceship. In fact, even Zhuanggu and Zuoliqing couldn't be sure of the answer. Not long after the informant who'd received the order turned and left, the Black Wind and Black Mosquito superstar destroyers were fired. Whether or not that demon had managed to send out the distress signal before the Fengtung ship was destroyed had become an unsolved case. As for Yixian, after successfully dealing with Zhuangtai and Zuoliqing, he didn't waste any time and immediately stored the Black Wind into the undying world within his body. Then, he waved his hand and put away the wreckage of the Fengtung battleship. Although it was just a pile of junk, it was too eye-catching to throw it in the void near the entrance of a wormhole. It was extremely inappropriate. Finding a remote place to throw it away would be more reassuring than leaving it here. With the disappearance of the wreckage of the Rising Tongue battleship, the void, where a monstrous slaughter was taking place not long ago, finally returned to its original tranquility. If it weren't for the faint smell of blood that still lingered in the void, it would have been as if nothing had ever happened. After confirming that there were no traces left behind, Yixian was completely relieved. Then he stepped into the Black Mosquito spaceship with the 8-starred Wang ladle behind him. As for the Mosquito Beast Prince Xueben, he directly put him into the beast bracelet on his wrist. Even though there were no outsiders here, Yixian didn't dare to let him stay outside for too long. If he was accidentally angered and went crazy, even Yixian didn't have much confidence in suppressing him with the influence of the slave seal. About 5 minutes later, all the preparations for the long-distance wormhole jump were ready. Then, after asking Yixian that there was nothing else to do and that he could enter the wormhole at any time and embark on the journey back to the Black Mosquito spaceship, the demon slave in charge of the central control room of the Black Mosquito spaceship immediately gave the order. More than 10 seconds later, Black Mosquito Cruise, which had been hovering in the void, suddenly moved. It turned into a black arrow and dived into the wormhole in front of it. The return journey to the Black Mosquito planet had officially begun. However, what awaited Yixian on the Black Mosquito spaceship was not good news. The mastermind behind Zuoliqing and Zhuangwu's sneak attack at the edge of the black hole was obviously Zhuangtai. In this kind of situation, Yixian returned unscathed, but Zuoliqing and Zhuangwu were nowhere to be seen for a long time. With Zhuangtai's slyness, it wouldn't be long before he realized it. When that happened, the entire Black Mosquito spaceship would be thrown into an unprecedented storm. However, although Zhuangtai was strong, he was only a 4th order origin. If they really fought, 8-star Wang Biao would be enough to restrain him. The one who really troubled Yixian was the high priest of the Black Mosquito tribe, Griskel Ray. Although this person's cultivation base was only at origin stage 1st stage, which was the same as the Mosquito Beast Prince Xueben, he was a special existence who had started as the tribe's holy son and continued to grow. He had even become the Black Mosquito tribe's high priest for many years now. His overall combat strength was clearly not as simple as his cultivation base seemed. If that wasn't the case, why would Zhuangtai be afraid? Therefore, according to Yixian's estimation, the Mosquito Prince Xueben was most likely no match for Griskel Ray. Therefore, when the conflict broke out and High Priest Griskel got involved, Yixian would have to use the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn again no matter what. However, that was exactly what he didn't want. The Black Mosquito Star was not the Holy Devil Forbidden Land. Once he used the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn, it was very likely that news would leak out. If the Devil Emperor Imowen found out about it, there might be unnecessary trouble. After all, the Devil Emperor had a special relationship with the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn. Although that was tens of thousands of years ago, for such an important matter, the royal family of the Devil people would most likely have some ancient books that were similar to their ancestral teachings that had been passed down for generations. Therefore, unless he had no other choice, Yixian really did not want to use the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn, let alone the headless infant corpse. Unfortunately, if Griskel Ray really interfered this time, he would have no choice but to use it. Of course, Yixian could just ignore it and go somewhere else to avoid the brunt of it. That was what he thought at first. He did not even want to become the Black Mosquito tribe's holy son. However, after he had deceived the Devil Emperor and the others with the excuse of coveting the Black Mosquito tribe's holy son and successfully escaped from the Devil Emperor planet, he had coincidentally become the Black Mosquito tribe's holy son. Therefore, Yixian's thoughts gradually changed. Under such circumstances, if he did not go to the Black Mosquito tribe, it would be tantamount to confessing without being pressed. The entire Devil People race would quickly put him on the wanted list. However, Yixian had no intention of returning to the human world in Universe 3. After all, the fragment of the immortal level superbrain that was the intelligent core of his personal Starry Sky communication system had been slowly growing and strengthening after Yixian had thrown in some ordinary multi-pupil thought crystals. He believed that it would not be long before the fragment received an upgrade. If nothing unexpected happened, Yixian's personal Starry Sky communication system would become much more powerful. Its range of coverage would also be much wider. At that time, he could start to search the Demon Dweller star field, and even the vast star fields of the first universe outside this star field, and try to find out if he could find any news about the Devouring origin. It wasn't easy for him to come to the first universe occupied by the Heavenly Legacy race. If he didn't settle this matter along the way, Yixian wouldn't be willing to accept it. Therefore, he was determined to become the holy son of the Black Mosquito tribe. With this identity, it would be much more convenient for him to do things in the domain in the future. Just as Yixian's thoughts were spinning in his mind, calculating everything and deciding on his next step, the Black Mosquito Bastion had successfully completed its first wormhole jump. After activating the concealment array, it instantly transformed into an invisible arrow and sped towards the second wormhole in front of it. But even so, even if the Black Mosquito cruiser traveled at full speed and performed long-distance wormhole jumps intermittently, it would still take more than a few days to reach the Black Mosquito cruiser. Therefore, Yixian quickly adjusted his state of mind. He pulled out a large amount of star core from the undying world within him and threw it all to the Devouring progenitor. He wanted to take advantage of this free time to try to break through to the next level. He hoped to reach Meteor Level 5 before he reached Black Mosquito Planet. Chapter 2976. Translator, Transin Editor. Transin to think about it in detail. Ding. A large amount of star core origin has been discovered. Do you wish to absorb it immediately? As Yixian took out a large amount of star core origin from his undying world and threw it to the Devouring system, the system's familiar notification sounded in Yixian's mind. Without hesitation, Yixian gave an affirmative reply. Then, he sat cross-legged on the leather sofa in the core area of the top floor of the Black Mosquito cruise and entered a state of cultivation, forgetting everything around him. In the core hall of the top floor area, only the 8-star Wang ladle was quietly lying on the ground. There was no need to doubt the loyalty of these soldiers because the Void Essence had given the Void Essence crystal, which represented the core of the Void Essence, to Yixian. Therefore, to these soldiers, the invisible aura emitted from Yixian's body was clearly their Void Essence crystal. From a certain point of view, these soldiers were more reliable than Yixian's demon slaves. Screech! As Yixian entered a state of cultivation again, his entire mind was gradually immersed in the supreme mysteries of the Dongshu fragment. Then, an earth-shattering familiar voice immediately sounded from the depths of the void, attracting Yixian's consciousness. At the same time, images flashed in his mind. The world of the Dongshu fragment that he had entered twice before appeared once again. The scene in front of him was so familiar. In his line of sight, a terrifying claw that was enormous like the sky was silently stretching out from the distant darkness of space. With a casual swipe, space was instantly obliterated, and a vast expanse of space collapsed. Then from the endless darkness, a round head stretched out. Its eyes were surrounded by endless chaotic mist. Although the light in its eyes could not be seen, Yixian could clearly feel its fury. Only now did he recall that the last 2 times he came here, even though the giant starry sky tortoise had also made a sound, it was merely a meaningless roar. It was as if it was relying on this to shake the entire void and send a signal to all existences. This is my territory. But this time the giant tortoise's voice was clearly a shrill and angry roar. Not only did it carry an extremely strong sense of fury, but it also seemed to be extremely serious, as if it had encountered a major event that could pierce through the sky. Could it be that as he cultivated this insightful emptiness fragment and improved his cultivation base, he was able to see some of the subsequent scenes from this illusory inheritance? If that was really the case, then why was this terrifying giant tortoise, whose terrifying strength was almost as large as a galaxy, so enraged as if it had gone berserk? In addition, when he was collecting the perfect nine-eyed golden crystal, and accepting the inheritance of the heaven-falling bough, he saw the chaotic battle between countless Desolation-era creatures. Did this giant tortoise also participate in it? As he entered the illusory inheritance scene of the Dongshu fragment again, Yixian sensed everything in front of him and compared the two scenes of inheritance of the Dongshu fragment with the heaven-falling bough. At this moment he was sure that the aura was exactly the same, and they were from the same era. The aura of the Void Prison, which was regarded as the Holy Devil Forbidden Area by the Demon Tribe, was also the same. These two illusory scenes and the real Void Prison were undoubtedly from the Desolation era. If this was the case, the battle that year affected almost the entire Desolation era, so the giant tortoise should have been alarmed and affected. Then, did it participate in the battle that year? Or in other words, did it survive or die at the end of the battle? As this thought flashed through his mind, Yixian suddenly felt a sense of fear. This giant tortoise was so powerful that a small pattern on its shell was as large as a galaxy. It could even destroy the endless void of an entire galaxy with a casual flick of its forelimbs. If such a terrifying existence had died in the battle that happened in the distant Desolation era, then what kind of powerful existence would the final victor be? In addition, the void cage that was used to seal the corpses of countless creatures from the primordial age was clearly ripped out from the starlight river of the primordial age by some supreme divine ability and thrown into the infinite void. Judging from the fact that the continents in the void cage seemed to be scattered pieces and were separated from each other by a void barrier that was full of space turbulence, it could be confirmed that this was the case. Regarding this, although Yixian only saw the edge of the continent where the corpse pool was, the situation was indeed so. However, according to his analysis, the condition of the edges of the continents in the other areas was most likely the same. This was enough to prove that the entire cage world was forcibly torn apart from the Desolation era by some kind of power. If it were not for the countless corpses in the corpse pool, this situation of a broken world being forcibly torn apart and separated could be a natural result of the collapse of heaven and earth caused by some kind of monstrous battle. However, although this possibility existed, it could not explain everything in the corpse pool. Therefore, all this must be the work of the final victor of the battle that year. Yixian even suspected that the so-called will of the heavenly way in this cage world was the work of the other party. Perhaps it was a fake will of the heavenly way condensed from a strand of its divine soul. After all, how could there be a complete will of the heavenly way in a broken world that was forcibly separated from the Desolation era? The will of the heavenly way in the Desolation era could not be so weak. Yixian did not think deeply about these questions before because the subsequent events unfolded one after another. He simply did not have time to care about these questions. However, at this moment, when he inadvertently thought about it, he suddenly felt a sense of extreme fear. The reason why that existence created this void cage world was very obvious. It was only to imprison and seal the bloodline and inheritance of the Desolation-era creatures that died in the battle that year, so that they would not leak out. The ferocious starry sky beasts in the cage world had some Desolation-era bloodline in their bodies. Although it was very faint, they were still imprisoned and could not leave. However, this time, he had swept away a large number of multipupil sense crystals from the corpse pool. The truth of these sense crystals was obviously that these Desolation-era creatures were unwilling to die. Because the last strand of obsession in their bodies was triggered, they produced corpse flowers and condensed corpse fruits in order to leave behind their inheritance. Unfortunately, only the corpses of the Desolation-era creatures that produced the perfect 9-pupil golden crystal could be considered to have successfully left behind their inheritance. The others had all failed. Yixian had 108 such inheritances in his hands. He had even obtained one of them and integrated it into his bloodline. In addition, there was the headless infant corpse. Looking at its power, it clearly had a greater origin, but he had also brought it out. Chapter 2977. Two tigers cannot share one mountain. Screech! Just as Yixian was filled with fear due to the distracting thoughts that suddenly appeared in his mind, and his entire body had already fallen into a state of fear, a long and mournful howl sounded out once again. It was still the voice of the giant turtle in space. Yixian was immediately awakened. He threw away the distracting thoughts in his mind, and focused his attention on the distant starry sky of the illusory world of the primordial legacy. In his line of sight, following the second roar that was even more mournful and angry, the enormous giant star tortoise crawled out from the depths of the endless darkness. The oppressive aura emitted from its terrifying giant tortoise body seemed to have enveloped the entire world in an instant, causing the space to tremble as if it could not bear it, and was about to collapse. This aura was so powerful that Yixian couldn't even guess what realm it was. He only knew that even among all the starry sky powerhouses he had ever met, the current demon emperor, the most powerful one, was only at the 9th level of the profound void realm. Compared to what Yixian felt from the giant star tortoise, it could only be considered an ant-like existence. No, he couldn't even be considered an ant. Comparing the two of them together was an extremely brainless method. What caused Yixian to be even more shocked and surprised was that there was clearly a strand of strong killing intent within the powerful aura that emanated from the giant astral tortoise's body at this moment. It was invisible, and like an extremely fast arrow, it swiftly shot towards the distant space to the right with a bang. It was like a final warning. Ing! Before Yixian could react to what had happened, at the end of the right side of the void where the invisible killing intent had shot towards, there was also a deep and dark void. Strangely enough, a resounding and clear dragon roar that could split the clouds suddenly sounded. It was like the roar of a giant dragon, and it revealed a vast and indescribable mysterious pressure that shot into the sky and instantly spread throughout the boundless void. Yixian's mind shook violently, and he didn't feel good at all. He also had a strong sense of familiarity with this dragon roar. It was clearly the voice of the giant star dragon. When Yixian received the inheritance of the immortal ancestor dragon's blood, he had also entered such an illusory world of the primordial era, and looked into the eyes of the giant star dragon, and the latter even raised its claw and pointed at Yixian from afar, shooting a ray of golden light into his glabella. That strand of golden light contained the bloodline of the starry sky dragon. Only after obtaining it would Yixian be able to completely refine that drop of immortal ancestral dragon blood. But why did the giant star dragon come here? It was the same as the giant star tortoise. It was clearly just a form imprint left behind by two supreme existences from the distant primordial era. Even the primordial void that Yixian was looking at right now might have long since been annihilated in the river of time and space. What was displayed in front of him was just a holographic three-dimensional film of a long time ago. Although the giant golden dragon's immortal ancestor dragon's blood also had a similar image, at least the background of this primordial era void, how could it appear here at this moment? The two images were clearly illusory. Even the starry sky dragon and the starry sky tortoise, the two terrifying creatures from the desolation era, were illusory imprints in the images. It was impossible for them to have any connection at all, just as Yixian's mind was in a state of complete chaos with his mouth agape. A figure with an aura that was not the slightest bit weaker than the giant tortoise's finally appeared in the darkness of the void to his right, accompanied by the resounding sound of a dragon's roar. Sure enough, it was the giant golden dragon that was entirely golden and exuded the endless majesty of an emperor. Roar! At this moment, Yixian's mind was roaring again. He was full of disbelief and could not accept what he saw in front of him. At the same time, the giant golden dragon, with the supreme majesty of an emperor, rushed out of the endless darkness of the void to the right. At this moment, it stretched out its neck and roared again. Not only did it directly ignore the hollow void giant tortoise's warning, but its right front claw also seemed to be showing its stance. With the second dragon roar, it suddenly waved its claw. Rumble! A huge explosion of heaven and earth was heard. Under the power of the giant golden dragon's casual wave, a vast galaxy was turned into nothingness, and a huge black hole was born, revealing an endless suction force. Several nearby galaxies were instantly sucked in and swallowed, but not even a single scale of the giant golden dragon was shaken. This clearly meant that it was not going to back down. If it wanted to fight, then fight. After keenly capturing this point, Yixian felt even worse. The scene in front of him clearly made him feel that the hollow void giant tortoise and the divine golden dragon were fighting for territory. This feeling was originally just a flash of inspiration, but Yixian caught some inspiration in an instant. At this moment, as his heart trembled violently again, a bold guess that was so exaggerated that even he himself could not believe slowly emerged in his mind, and it became more and more intense and clear. Fighting for territory? If there were no accidents, this should be the truth. Perhaps this was the reason why the giant golden dragon's inheritance image, which only existed in the drop of immortal ancestor dragon's blood, was able to cross the boundary and reach the inheritance image left behind by the hollow void giant tortoise. Whether it was the inheritance left behind by the hollow void giant tortoise, or the drop of immortal ancestor dragon's blood that represented the bloodline of the giant golden dragon, they were all obtained by Yixian. The ancestor dragon's blood had been refined and integrated into his own bloodline, and the profound meaning of the immortal ancestor dragon's blood was everywhere in Yixian's body. These two supreme inheritances from the antiquity age were now in his body. As the saying goes, two tigers cannot live on one mountain. Fighting for territory was naturally unavoidable. Even if it did not appear now, one day in the future it would eventually erupt. This bold guess almost instantly made Yixian's heart sink. On one hand, it was his own cultivation method, and on the other hand, it was the giant golden dragon's inheritance that had been integrated into his bloodline, and he had also activated the body tempering secret technique contained within. To him, these were all extremely important things, and he could not afford to lose them. Yixian was naturally the one who didn't want to see such a tragedy of infighting. In addition, it didn't matter if these two fellows were fighting over territory, but the key point was that they were both in their own bodies. Although they were only a single inheritance imprint, Yixian didn't dare to doubt their might in the slightest. Such a terrifying force was actually using his body as a battlefield for a decisive battle, and wanted to start a great battle. This was clearly a scam. Screech. Chapter 2978. A round of mahjong on the other hand, before Yixian could recover from the great shock of the golden dragon's sudden arrival, a long howl filled with endless sharpness suddenly appeared from the left side of the void without any warning. It was as if it had come from the heavens, and Yixian was so shocked that he almost collapsed in an instant. Although this roar was not like the previous roar from the Dongshu void giant tortoise and the golden dragon, Yixian found it extremely familiar. But at this moment, when Yixian roughly understood the source of the conflict between the Dongshu void giant tortoise and the golden dragon, he did not need to think about the origin of this roar at all. He understood it in an instant. In fact, it was the appearance of this roar that reminded Yixian of one thing. That was, the supreme desolate level inheritance he had obtained seemed to be only the two golden dragons and the giant tortoise in front of him. Not to mention the others. The heaven-falling bow divine ability that was inherited from the nine-eyed golden crystal was clearly a desolate level inheritance. Moreover, this heaven-falling bow divine ability also happened to leave a consciousness imprint from the desolate era. And it was the scene of the bloody battle that had taken place in the desolate era. In that bloody battle, where the flames of war had spread to almost every area of the desolate era, although Yixian did not see the Dongshu void giant tortoise, Yixian saw the golden dragon and the mysterious figure who left behind the heaven-falling bow divine ability. In that shocking battle, there were countless desolate era creatures who were engaged in bloody slaughter, but there were clearly more than 100 figures who were the most eye-catching. At that time, Yixian casually glanced at them and captured their existence. These 100 figures were obviously the supreme existences who stood at the top of the pyramid among the countless desolate era creatures. The golden dragon was one of them. Although the desolate ancient Yaksha who left behind the heaven-falling bow divine ability was only a few feet in size, it could not be compared to the golden dragon, whose body was so huge that it could directly crush an entire galaxy. But it was clearly one of the most eye-catching figures among the 100 or so supreme existences. The unparalleled sharpness of the bow that could split the sky with the raise of its hand had clearly startled countless primordial beings in the void battleground in the illusory inheritance scene. Even the 100 primordial powerhouses like the golden dragon had clearly cast fearful gazes toward it at that moment. In other words, this desolate ancient Yaksha was most likely a supreme Desolate Era creature of the Desolate Era, on the same level as the giant tortoise and the golden dragon. Therefore, it was also qualified to participate in the battle between the desolate ancient dragon and the golden dragon. In the blink of an eye, the one-on-one situation had turned into a three-on-one situation. If there was one more person, it would be enough to form a mahjong table. As this thought flashed through his mind, Yixian felt like crying, but no tears came out, because he suddenly thought of another matter. In the heaven-falling bow divine ability inheritance scene, Yixian saw more than 100 supreme existences like the golden dragon and the desolate ancient Yaksha. This time, the nine-eyed golden crystal he obtained from the corpse pool, which contained a desolate era divine ability inheritance, seemed to be exactly the same number. 108. There was almost no difference between the two. This should be just a coincidence, right? Otherwise, if Yixian were to collect the remaining 107 nine-eyed golden crystals in the future, and obtain the inheritance of the primordial divine ability within them, then the terrifying power that would start a battle within his body and fight for territory, even if the Dongshu giant tortoise and the golden dragon were to not be counted, there would be at least 108 of them. Just thinking about it made one shudder. Unfortunately, as this thought surfaced in his mind, even Yixian himself did not believe that it was just a coincidence. No wonder there were countless consciousness crystals in the corpse pool, but only a little over 100 of them had reached the perfect grade of 9 pupils and successfully passed down the bloodline divine ability. This ability to pass down the bloodline divine ability after death was obviously not simple. Ordinary primordial creatures would not be able to do it. Most likely, only the supreme existences of the Desolate Era had this ability. Therefore, the identity of the corpses that gave birth to the 108 demonic corpse flowers and bore the inheritance crystal fruit in their flower trays was obvious. They were the ones Yixian saw in the heaven-falling bow divine ability inheritance scene. The 100 or so powerful existences who dominated the battlefield. He just did not know if the remaining 107 nine-eye golden crystals contained the cultivation methods and bloodline legacies of the Dongshu void giant tortoise and golden dragon. If there were, it would mean that they had also fallen in that battle back then. If not, it was very likely that it would have survived. At most, it would have escaped with heavy injuries. With the terrifying vitality of such a creature, it was possible that it was still alive today. It was possible that it was hiding in the depths of some void plane, slowly recovering from the wounds it had suffered in the past. All this took a long time to describe, but in fact it flashed through Yixian's mind like lightning. At this moment, with the third unexpected roar, a figure of not very tall silently shot over from the furthest dark void from the left. The moment it entered Yixian's sight, he immediately sighed faintly. He guessed right. This figure that rushed over at a very fast speed was only a few dozen feet tall. It had a pair of huge wings on its back. At this moment, it was this pair of black demon wings that flapped rapidly, turning its figure into a fast meteor that was difficult to be seen by the naked eye. It swept over in the void. While they were still far away, an incomparably sharp murderous aura had already rushed over, causing everyone to be extremely shocked. Even the Dongshu giant tortoise and the golden divine dragon, who had almost fought on the spot, turned their heads to look at the same time. There was a trace of surprise and fear in their eyes. This figure was clearly the same as the corpse that grew out of Yixian's mouth when he was picking the first 9-pupil golden crystal. He opened his mouth wide and looked up at the corpse pool, causing the demonic beauty that nurtured the 9-pupil golden crystal to grow from the roots of the corpse flower. The only difference was that between its eyebrows, there was a small golden bow pattern, which was exactly the same as the inheritance mark of the heaven-falling bow in Yixian's Sea of Consciousness. It was obvious that the one who had arrived was the small golden bow that was suspended in Yixian's Sea of Consciousness. As for the figure of the desolate ancient Yaksha, it was only a virtual one. It was only to show off its identity and origin. Buzz! At this moment, just as the ancient Yaksha transformed by the small golden bow was coming from the left, in another direction, the fourth existence that was fighting for territory finally appeared at this moment. Before its figure arrived, there was already a faint high-frequency buzzing sound in the void. Yixian shook his head and sighed. This time, a table of mahjong was finally gathered. However, although it was not that he did not think that this guy would also interfere and suddenly appear at this moment, it was basically impossible. Chapter 2979. Translator, Trans and Editor, Trans in the Fog of Infant Corpse Hum. Accompanied by a violent trembling sound that seemed to resonate with the entire void. A huge blood-colored curved horn about 30 feet in length whizzed over from the void in that direction and appeared out of thin air. Apart from Yixian, the giant tortoise, the giant golden dragon, and the desolate ancient yaksha that was formed by the heavenly fallen bough's imprint, all looked towards the giant blood-colored horn that was whistling towards them. This huge horn was the Weeping Soul Bloody horn that the Weeping Soul Bloody ape had created when its original body was petrified and stuck on the cliff, in the Forbidden Valley of the Devil Emperor planet, which then became a space tunnel that connected the Forbidden Valley to the Forbidden Valley. The Weeping Soul Bloody horn was formed by the Weeping Soul Bloody ape, in that shocking battle that occurred in the distant Desolate era. The bloodline source of the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn's predecessor, an ancient blood ape with extremely mysterious aura in its eyes, had also appeared. Yixian had seen it in the picture of the Sky-Fallen Bough's inheritance. The ape even seemed to have sensed something. It turned its head and glanced at Yixian with a touch of insidious evilness in its eyes that could make one's soul tremble. At that time, in the vast void of the Desolate Antiquity era, countless creatures of the Desolate Antiquity era were fighting fiercely. Only the desolate ancient blood ape was hiding behind a dark dead star by itself. Its eyes were filled with delight and satisfaction that it had succeeded in its scheme. It was quietly observing the entire battlefield. That was why it gave Yixian the strongest impression of it as a schemer. As for its strength, since the desolate ancient blood ape didn't make a move in the picture of the Sky-Fallen Bough's inheritance, Yixian couldn't figure out its strength. He couldn't be sure whether it was at the same level as the Dongshu Void Tortoise or not. Therefore, the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn shouldn't have appeared in this chaotic battle for territory. It wasn't just because the ancient blood ape, the source of the Bloodhorn's bloodline, wasn't one of the most powerful beings in the primordial era. It didn't have the qualifications to compete with the Dongshu giant tortoise. More importantly, this Weeping Soul Bloodhorn had clearly been suppressed and refined by the headless infant corpse not long ago. Even if the Weeping Soul Blood ape, whose bloodline was highly atavistic and later collapsed its remnant soul to condense this horn, had left some kind of hidden backup plan in this bloodhorn that was equivalent to a newborn bloodline, but since the headless infant corpse had already made its move, with its terrifying strength that could heavily injure the remnant world and fake will of the heavenly Tao in the desolate ancient cage, it would not be able to do anything. Those hidden arrangements had most likely been erased long ago. In other words, it was impossible for there to be any problems with the bloodhorn that had been refined by the headless infant corpse. Therefore, in Yixian's opinion, even if the source of its bloodline, the ancient blood ape, was in existence at the level of a supreme expert from the primordial era, in a scene like today, this bloodhorn shouldn't have a chance to appear. But now it had clearly come. Moreover, its aura was clearly extremely domineering and arrogant. Before its figure appeared, the entire space of the inheritance was already covered by its violent buzzing sound, completely enveloping it. It carried a supremely domineering aura of disdain and contempt. In addition, even the Dongshu giant tortoise, the golden divine dragon, and the desolate ancient yaksha who turned their heads to look, had a faint trace of fear in their eyes when they saw the bloodhorn whistling over. In addition to fear, what was more intense was surprise. Screech. Before Yixian could recover from his shock, the desolate ancient yaksha that was whistling over had already let out a second roar towards the sky. Then it abruptly turned around and left. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared into the depths of the endless darkness of the void in the direction it came from. Yixian could clearly hear a sense of undisguised surprise and gratification from the roar before it turned around and left. It was as if suddenly seeing this bloodhorn was equivalent to its wish being fulfilled. In addition, the golden dragon on the right side of the void also let out a high-pitched roar, then turned around without hesitation and disappeared in the blink of an eye. The meaning of this dragon's roar was exactly the same as the roar of the desolate ancient yaksha. Both were pleasantly surprised and gratified. The only difference was that the surprise in the dragon's roar seemed to be stronger, while the gratification was obviously much fainter. In the blink of an eye, the atmosphere in this inheritance scene had quietly changed. The three forces that had originally seen a great battle turn around without hesitation and walk to two sides. The reason why the remaining Dongshu giant tortoise did not leave was most likely because this was its territory. In other words, if it wasn't for this, the Dongshu giant tortoise would have turned around and left long ago. This scene happened so suddenly that Yixian immediately fell into a strong shock and was unable to accept it for a long time. Even if the source of the bloody horn, the treacherous primordial blood ape, was powerful, it couldn't be so powerful that the golden dragon and the primordial yaksha didn't dare to face the bloody horn condensed by the remnant soul of its bloodline descendant, right? Moreover, the golden dragon and the desolate ancient yaksha clearly did not have any dissatisfaction in their roars and roars before they turned around and left. There was only joy and excitement. Could it be in shock? Yixian's heart suddenly skipped a beat, and he subconsciously looked at the huge blood horn in the distance again. In the next moment, his eyes lit up, and he seemed to have come to a sudden realization. So that was it. Although it was indeed the weeping soul bloodhorn that was coming, the consciousness in it was obviously someone else. It was the headless baby corpse that had turned into a corpse lamp and attached to Yixian's left chest. After being refined by the headless baby corpse, the weeping soul bloodhorn also had a mark in the shape of a corpse lamp, but it was very small. At this moment, on the weeping soul bloodhorn that was roaring toward them, where the corpse lamp mark should have been, there was clearly a human face. To be more precise, it should be the face of an infant. It still had a slightly childish face, but its eyes were completely blood red and revealed endless ferocity that overflowed into the heavens. This strange face was very familiar to Yixian. It was exactly the same face that should have been on the neck of the headless baby corpse that had been holding in its hand. It was the headless baby corpse that was coming. In this way, everything could be explained. However, although this headless baby corpse must have a great origin, the Dongshu giant tortoise, the golden dragon, and the desolate ancient yaksha were all supreme existences that stood proudly in the antiquity age. The latter even used to draw a bow, and wanted to shoot down the sky with an arrow. How could such existences bow their heads so easily? Moreover, although they were afraid of this headless baby corpse, they did not have the slightest hostility. On the contrary, they showed their support and support. This was probably something that even the will of heaven in the antiquity age could not do. Then this headless baby corpse, who was it? Chapter 2980. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The wrath of Zhuofengtai as the Dongshu Void Tortoise's figure disappeared completely from the weeping soul bloodhorn's domineering aura. The entire void of inheritance fell into a strange silence. Even the buzzing sound in the void had disappeared without anyone noticing. At this moment, the weeping soul bloodhorn that was whistling through the air circled around the central void domain before turning around and shooting back the way it came from. It was as if its arrival was merely an act of inspection. Its purpose was to disperse the three forces that had almost fought over the territory. Perhaps it was also taking advantage of this opportunity to announce the ownership of this territory. It clearly meant that this territory belonged to it. The reason why the Dongshu Void Tortoise, the Golden Dragon, and the Desolate Yaksha had all chosen to retreat at once was very likely, because they had understood this layer of meaning. Therefore, they had used this method to express their attitude. Unfortunately, all of this was just Yixian's conjecture. There was no way to confirm it. At this moment, although he also wanted to immediately stop the weeping soul bloodhorn that had circled around and immediately whizzed away, he wanted to personally ask the headless infant corpse to resolve the doubts in his heart. However, in this void of inheritance, although Yixian's consciousness existed, it couldn't make a sound, let alone make any substantial movements. This was because he didn't even have a body. He was like a ray of light cast from outside the window, watching the world through the window. There was nothing he could do except watch. Thus, the weeping soul bloodhorn whistled through the air in the end, and it quickly vanished. Yixian's consciousness was suddenly repelled by a repulsive force and retreated from the void of inheritance. In the next instant, the scene in front of him changed to Yixian's knowledge sea. At this moment, in 4 different directions above his knowledge sea, 4 different existences of different shapes were quietly floating and rotating slowly. The spirit source core, the void essence crystal, the small golden bow that represented the desolate yaksha and the golden dragon's bloodline, and the golden dragon scale. In response to the arrival of Yixian's self-awareness, the golden dragon scale of the golden bow that was hovering in the sea of consciousness did not react at all. It was as if they were completely unaware of everything that had happened in the void dimension fragment and had not participated in it at all. Yixian examined each of them separately with a complicated look in his eyes, and then he withdrew his gaze with a bitter smile. His gaze swept over the sea of consciousness that represented the cultivation realm of his hollow void skill, and was the source of his cultivation power. The sea of consciousness in front of him was clearly much stronger than before. The extent of its strength had even far surpassed the increase after the previous cultivation breakthrough. In addition, the energy of the origin source of the planet core that had been transferred to him through the devouring system had been fully transferred. Under the guidance of the original power in Yixian's sea of consciousness, it had started to circulate according to the profound meaning of the incomplete Dongshu book. It had been refined and completely transformed into the power of Yixian's cultivation. In other words, the cultivation this time ended inexplicably. Fortunately, judging from the somewhat exaggerated degree of expansion of the sea of consciousness, the result of this cultivation was obviously achieved. His cultivation realm had successfully ushered in another breakthrough. With a touch of excitement, Yixian's self-consciousness immediately withdrew from the sea of consciousness and ended the cultivation this time. The next moment, Yixian, who was sitting cross-legged on the sofa in the core area of the top floor of the Black Mosquito Cruise, slightly opened his eyes. As expected, the sound of the devouring system quietly rang out in his mind. What caught him off guard was that the sound of the system's notification rang out in his mind consecutively after a breakthrough. If it were not for the slight difference between the two notifications, Yixian would have mistakenly thought that the devouring system had inexplicably activated some kind of replay function. Ding! Congratulations to the host. Your cultivation realm has increased. Current level. Level 5 of the meteor state. Ding! Congratulations to the host. Your cultivation realm has increased. Current level. Level 6 of the sobbing star state. Level 5? Level 6? What's going on? Could it be that this time he had broken through two small levels in succession, from level 4 of the meteor state to level 6 of the meteor state? No wonder the expansion of the sea of consciousness was so exaggerated. If it was a breakthrough of 2 levels, it would make sense. The surprise came so quickly that Yixian was in a trance for half an hour before his state of mind finally recovered from the surging waves of excitement. After a quick analysis, he quickly came to a conclusion. The reason why he had unexpectedly ushered in 2 consecutive breakthroughs in his cultivation, and advanced 2 small levels in the blink of an eye, was not only because he had thrown a little too much star core origin to the devouring system to absorb energy, but more importantly, it was mostly related to the invisible improvement of his state of mind when he had used the heaven-falling bow for the second time to shoot an arrow at the will of the Heavenly Ways doppelganger in the desolate Antiquity cage. In addition, the large amount of spiritual power, life force, and chi and blood force that the headless infant corpse had absorbed from the dozens of descendants of the demon emperor was so abundant that it had almost overnourished Yixian's head. This was most likely one of the reasons. Although this was also a guess, whether it was true or not was already meaningless. The most important thing was that Yixian's cultivation had indeed broken through to the 6th level of the meteor realm in one fell swoop. This was already the peak of the middle stage of this realm. After the next breakthrough, Yixian would officially enter the late stage of the meteor realm. At that time, he would almost be within reach of crossing this realm and entering the satellite realm behind it. He was finally about to enter the 3rd major realm. These thoughts flashed through his mind, and Yixian could not help but clench his right fist subconsciously. Waves of emotion surged in his heart again. In fact, not much time had passed since he had entered the starry sky environment with the vast void as his back. Yixian had finally advanced from the weakest meteor realm of the 1st level to the satellite realm, which was about to enter the 3rd major realm. Although he was still very weak, at least he had successfully taken the first solid step in the starry sky level and was closer to the path of the strongest in the future. After a short while, Yixian dispelled the distracting thoughts in his mind, adjusted his state of mind, and quickly calmed down. It was not until now that he realized that this cultivation session had taken him several days. Now that the Black Mosquito ship had jumped through many long-distance wormholes, it was already halfway through the journey. Even the black hole of life had been left behind. Will we arrive at the Black Mosquito star so soon? It really does feel like I'm not mentally prepared. Yixian muttered to himself, shaking his head with a wry smile. Obviously, he was just mocking himself. After returning to the Black Mosquito star, Yixian was even looking forward to everything that was about to happen. As the chief commander of the Black Mosquito tribe, how crazy would Zhuo Fengtai's anger be after confirming that his only son had been killed by the new holy son of the tribe? Chapter 2981. The Mosquito Slayer's request. In 2 days, the Black Mosquito would enter its final wormhole. Once it was done, it would be considered close to the edge of the Black Mosquito domain. During these 2 days, Yixian didn't do anything, other than occasionally trying to contact the headless infant corpse that had transformed into a corpse lamp and was branded on his left chest. He didn't receive any response. The rest of the time, he spent almost all of it on the immortal level fragment that was the intelligence center of his personal space communication system. Ever since Yixian had acquired a large number of multi-pupil crystals from the corpse pool in the forbidden domain of Demonic Saint, he'd given them to the Devouring system. The system had absorbed the crystal's energy and channeled it into its communications system's energy storage. Only a few days had passed since then, but the fragment that served as the intelligence center of the communication system had clearly grown a lot. Although it hadn't yet reached the point where it could break free from fragmentation, at least it had changed. The growth was clearly visible, and it was enough to excite Yixian. Before this, he had continuously thrown countless ordinary demonic will star crystals, which were almost the size of a small hill, but the immortal horn fragment did not show any reaction. Today's change had at least cleared away any lingering doubts Yixian had about the fragment's inability to recover. Not long after, the day this immortal fragment broke free from the fragmented level, was the day Yixian started an official search for news of the devouring origin in the demon domain, which was located at the edge of the first universe. Even if he didn't find anything in the domain of the demons, he'd just have to leave. The domain of the first cosmos was but a corner of the first cosmos. The void beyond was vast. Yixian's sixth sense told him that he would find the source of devouring essence in the first cosmos, and that day wouldn't be too far away. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye, and the Black Mosquito finally finished its last wormhole jump. It traveled for a while in the void before its eyes, and then it came to a stop silently. Not far ahead was the edge of the Black Mosquito domain. Black Mosquito Bastion wasn't suited for navigating this region, so it was better to be safe than sorry. Yixian immediately took the 8-star royal ladle and left the Black Mosquito ship. With a wave of his hand, he kept it into his undying world. Then, he summoned his Dongshu shuttle and stepped in. The 8-star king ladle was sent directly to the lowest level of the Dongshu shuttle by Yixian. There, the 1,000 mosquito beasts and the 1,000 soldier ladles each chose a corner to nest in. Right now, it was an area that only belonged to the vicious beasts. The second level in the middle was where Gui Hai Dao led a 1,000-man legion of fiend slaves. They were on standby. At that moment, Yixian stepped into the Dongshu shuttle and appeared on the first level at the top. There were only 2 people there, the wretched mosquito butcher and Hao Fengfeng. These 2 fellows were sitting on the sofa in the resting area of the main cabin on the top floor. It was unknown what they were talking about, but when they heard the commotion, they both turned their heads and looked over. The wretched mosquito butcher's face was immediately filled with smiles as he stood up and eagerly walked over to Yixian. Hao Fengfeng, on the other hand, was slightly stunned. Her face obviously darkened, but she did not say anything. Yixian knew that it was because his performance in the Forbidden Valley of the Demon Emperor planet was completely different from his usual self. This had greatly surprised him and made him want to distance himself from Hao Fengfeng. But this was good. Yixian was looking forward to it, so he would not explain anything. At that moment, he saw that Hao Fengfeng did not say anything and looked away after exchanging a glance with him. Yixian shrugged indifferently and said casually, "The Black Mosquito Star Zone is in front of us. Your Black Roar Star is not in the same direction as the Black Mosquito Star. So, if you have something to do, you'd better look at the star map and remind me at the right place to stop the Dongshu shuttle." In other words, he did not intend to bring Hao Fengfeng back to the Black Mosquito Star with him. He was hinting that he would leave halfway or even right now. What? You value the title of Holy Son of the Black Mosquito tribe so much, and now you finally got it. You and I are acquaintances. Don't tell me you didn't even think of inviting me to the most glorious Holy Sun ceremony? Yixian's words caused a trace of anger to flash through Hao Fengfeng's eyes. She immediately replied with a mocking tone. There will be a Holy Sun ceremony after that. But before that, I'm afraid the Black Mosquito Star will experience some turmoil. So, you won't get anything out of coming with me now. Yixian directly ignored the sarcasm in her words and frankly stated the reason. Although Hao Fengfeng did not know that Yixian had killed Zhuo Liqing and Zhuo Hongguo, she was clear about the conflicts and disputes between the former and Yixian. When Yixian mentioned the turmoil on the Black Mosquito Star, he wanted her to think in this direction. I didn't steal Zhuo Liqing's Holy Sun title. No matter how angry Zhuo Fengtai is, he won't vent his anger on me, right? Do you really think I'm a pushover that anyone can bully? Hao Fengfeng curled her lips and looked indifferent. Although there won't be any benefits, at least there won't be any harm. I'll just take it as watching a show. I'll make a small profit. After saying that, she turned around and walked into a cabin. Obviously, even if she was going to the Black Mosquito Star, she had no intention of staying with Yixian on the way. The latter shook his head speechlessly. However, he soon realized that ever since she became suspicious of him, although Hao Fengfeng's feminine voice was still the same as before, she no longer called herself Luan Jia in front of him. This was a good sign. He could finally get rid of this sissy. Thinking of this, Yixian was immediately amused again. At this time, the wretched mosquito butcher, who had an ingratiating smile on his face, happened to be right in front of him. He bowed slightly and said with a bashful smile, "Master, I haven't been back to the Black Mosquito Star area for many years. Although I didn't have any relatives or friends when I left, and I'm not a native of the Black Mosquito Star area, but a demon cultivator from another star area, I did stay here for a period of time. Why don't you take me with you this time? It's a good opportunity for me to see the supreme glory of my master when you become the Holy Sun. Do you really want to go to the Black Mosquito Star?" Yixian was actually quite surprised that the wretched mosquito butcher would suddenly make such a request. However, after being stunned for a moment, he smiled indifferently and nodded without hesitation. "That's fine. After all, I'm the Holy Son of the Black Mosquito tribe in the future. I can't do everything by myself. I need someone to run errands for me." Chapter 2982. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation sensation. If it was in the past, before Yixian entered the Black Mosquito Star, he would definitely stop somewhere in the void near this star. After storing the Void Cave shuttle into the undying world within his body, he would then use his physical body to traverse the void and enter the Black Mosquito Star. After all, although the Dongshu shuttle's extraordinariness couldn't be easily seen from its exterior, a casual glance was enough to tell that it wasn't an ordinary ship that could be found on the streets. Yixian was an ordinary demon cultivator, who had just entered the second great realm. It was indeed rather eye-catching to have such a small private warship, which wasn't necessarily a good thing. Back then, even the strongest existence under his command, the Mosquito Beast Emperor Shueben, was only at the Origin Realm first level. Shueben was no match for the Black Mosquito Star's great commanders Wu Fengtai or the High Priest Hue Gulei. But now it was different. In terms of status, Yixian was already the Holy Son of the entire Black Mosquito tribe. Although his status in the entire tribe was far inferior to that of the Great Commander and the High Priest, he was already on equal footing with the leaders of the 10 Great Devil Cultivators. As for strength, other than the Mosquito Beast Prince, Shueben, Yixian now had an additional 8-star Wang ladle at the middle stage of the Origin Realm. These were all powers that could be publicly displayed. Needless to say, the former had already shown himself before leaving the Black Mosquito Star. Needless to say, he could just say that he had recently broken through. In any case, Shueben was crazy. He had broken through from the initial Black Hole Realm to the Origin Realm first level in just a few months. Even if it was shocking, no one would really investigate it. As for the 8-star Wang Gua, he could also find an excuse to brush it off. Moreover, other than these 2 Origin stage ferocious beasts that could be publicly revealed, the secret power that Yixian could use was clearly even more powerful. It was one thing for the headless infant corpse to appear, but the small Black Mosquito Star wasn't qualified for it to take action. However, the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn was different. It was only a refined item from an infant's corpse. If he was truly forced into a corner, Yixian could just take it out and kill all the devil cultivator experts present. It just so happened that the number of magic cores in his possession was too little. He was afraid that there wouldn't be enough for the sixth evolution of the source core in his brain in the future. Since the previous concerns no longer existed, and the conflict between him and Zhuofengtai would come sooner or later, there was no need to deliberately hide anything. It was meaningless. With this thought in mind, Yixian drove the Dongshu shuttle all the way from the edge of the Black Mosquito Star field. After arriving at the Black Mosquito Star, the speed of the battleship did not decrease in the slightest. Like an extremely fast arrow, it plunged into the atmosphere of the Black Mosquito Star and charged straight for the main city of the Black Mosquito Star. The Demonkin planets in the Demonkin tribe also had a star communication system, and the AI center was also the star superbrain, but it was the most ordinary star superbrain. Although the Demonkin tribe was already used to the technological elements of the Heaven's Legacy race, they clearly weren't too keen on it. Therefore, the star network of the Demonkin star was simply too weak compared to the administrative planets of the Third World's human race. There were many functions that were lacking. However, as one of the 10 main planets of the Demonkin tribe's foreign tribes, the star network of the Black Mosquito Star was obviously not as simple as that of the 10 main planets of the Demonkin tribe, such as the Black Mountain Star. When necessary, they could take the initiative to contact the Demonkin Emperor Star and connect to the star network. As for receiving signals and information from the star network of the Demonkin Emperor Star, there was naturally no problem. However, this kind of long-distance star network information transmission was extremely energy-consuming. Therefore, ever since the fierce mosquito ship left the Black Mosquito Star and set off for the Demonkin Emperor Star, Zhuofengtai had never contacted Zhuohongwu and Zhuolicheng. They were not qualified to use the long-distance star network communication function of the Demonkin Emperor Star. Therefore, in Zhuofengtai's opinion, that ungrateful trial-taker of the Black Mountain Star, Zhang Wuji, must have died on his way to the Demonkin Emperor Star. Until a few days ago, when the star network of the Demonkin Emperor Star suddenly sent an official circular letter, which was just a formality, Zhuofengtai was completely dumbfounded. The content of the circular letter was very simple and clear. The meaning was also very clear. Zhang Wuji, the new holy son of the Black Mosquito tribe, was appointed by the Demonkin Emperor himself. Therefore, considering that his cultivation was too weak and unpresentable, the Grand Commander and the High Priest of the Black Mosquito tribe were ordered to supervise him and urge him to practice diligently and not to wander around without permission. At that time, the High Priest of the Imperial City, Wenxing, would personally come to the Black Mosquito Star to test his cultivation. The circular letter stunned Zhuofengtai on the spot. He was silent for a long time, and his mind was in a mess. Apparently, the High Priest, Wenxing, also saw the circular letter at the same time. Therefore, when Zhang Wuji entered the Holy Demon Mystery area for the first time in this trial, he had received some kind of spiritual power inheritance. Among the entire demon tribe, he was almost as talented as the Holy Son of the Black Wind tribe in terms of spiritual power. Therefore, the news that he had been appointed by the Demonkin Emperor as the new Holy Son of the Black Mosquito tribe spread to the entire Black Mosquito City almost instantly. Then, it quickly spread to the entire Black Mosquito Star, as well as the Black Mountain Star and the other 7 demon tribes. The entire Black Mosquito tribe was in an uproar. It was no secret that the Grand Commander's only son, Zhuolicheng, was determined to win this trial. The higher-ups of the 10 demon tribes were well aware of this. No one had expected that the result, which was originally decided without any suspense, would be completely rewritten because of a dark horse that suddenly rushed out and caused an abrupt change. Faced with such an unacceptable and embarrassing result, Grand Commander Zhuofengtai's anger was about to completely explode this time. These discussions had been raging in the Black Mosquito tribe's 10 demon tribes for the past few days after the circular letter was spread. Countless demon tribe experts gathered their gazes on the Black Mosquito Star, paying close attention to the subsequent development of this matter. Many people believed that the moment the Black Mosquito tribe's trial team returned to the Black Mosquito Star, Grand Commander Zhuofengtai would explode. An invisible tension shrouded the entire Black Mosquito Star, and it was increasing day by day in the past few days. Right at this moment, a small private warship arrogantly plunged into the Black Mosquito Star's atmosphere at an extremely fast speed. It whistled past and boldly charged toward the Black Mosquito City, which represented the core of the Black Mosquito tribe's power. At this time there was still someone who dared to act so rashly. This time Zhuofengtai's whiskers had been provoked, and he was worried about where to vent his anger. In the Black Mosquito City, countless demon tribe experts looked up and muttered to themselves. Their eyes were filled with sympathy. Chapter 2983. Translator. Nayarbo Studio Editor. Nayarbo Studio. I was just guessing. Black Mosquito City. Inside the Black Mosquito Tribe's ancestral temple. The moment the Dongshu shuttle entered the Black Mosquito Star's atmosphere, the Grand Priest Hue Gulei had already sensed it. However, he did not pay any attention to it. At this moment, as the Grand Commander's Wafengtai soared into the sky from the Grand Commander's official residence with a thunderous roar, he threw a punch at the Dongshu shuttle with boundless killing intent. The corners of the Grand Priest Hue Gulei's mouth slowly curled up into a mocking smile. For those in high positions, the more urgent the situation is, the calmer they are. You're so impulsive. Do you think you can control me and the Black Mosquito Tribe alone? At this point, Hue Gulei shook his head with a disdainful smile. He glanced at the Dongshu shuttle and said, "This shuttle is not ordinary. I'm sure its owner is someone with a strong background. It's a pity that he bumped into Wafengtai." It's him?" Halfway through his sentence, Hue Gulei suddenly stopped talking. Shock appeared on his face, and his eyes almost popped out of their sockets. He exclaimed, "What's going on? That brat actually came back alone?" As soon as he finished speaking, a wisp of bright light flashed through his eyes, and it suddenly condensed as if he was capturing something. Almost in the next instant, a wisp of pleasant surprise quickly bloomed on his face, and even his voice revealed a strong sense of anticipation amidst the joy. The two brands are actually still there? No wonder this kid is fine. Zhuanggu didn't make a move? However, this is not important. The key is the other seal. It has obviously been activated. I wonder if the spirit rabbit has been obtained. At this thought, Hue Gulei could no longer sit still. With a flash of his body, he dashed out of the house and flew into the sky. At the same time, in the sky above the Black Mosquito City, just as the dimensional void shuttle pierced through the atmosphere of the Black Mosquito Star and arrived above the main city and was about to land on the ground, the enraged Wafengtai, who was in the Great Commander's official residence deep within the main city, roared and threw a punch. This scene entered the eyes of countless demon experts in the huge Black Mosquito City as they looked up. Some of the devil cultivators were already shaking their heads and sighing. This was clearly a case of bad luck. With Wafengtai's origin level 9 cultivation base, he could even destroy a 1,000-meter-long planetary battleship, let alone a small private battleship that was less than 500 meters long. However, the scene that appeared in the sky in the next instant caused the jaws of countless demon dwellers in the Black Mosquito City to drop to the ground. Surprised cries of surprise rang out from everywhere. Boom! Screech! An earth-shattering explosion resounded. Wafengtai's all-out attack was filled with anger. Although it was only a simple punch, its power was enough to topple the mountains and overturn the seas. At this moment, an explosion resounded. It was clear that this terrifying punch had hit its target. However, the Dongshu shuttle that had suddenly stopped in midair was clearly not damaged in the slightest. A gigantic black ladle beast that was about 100 feet in size silently appeared and blocked the front of the shuttle. The power of Wafengtai's furious punch smashed onto the gigantic ladle beast, but it clearly did not shake it in the slightest. This gigantic floating beast was the 8-star ladle. However, in the Demon Dweller starfield, the ladle tribe was called the Void Devouring Beast. This was derived from their terrifying ability to devour the void of the galaxy. Origin Void Devouring Beast? This is impossible. As the 8-star ladle's warning roar rang out, Wafengtai's expression suddenly changed as he cried out in shock. It was common knowledge that the Void-Devouring Beast's black ladle body was extremely sturdy. However, the Void-Devouring Beast that could withstand the power of his full-powered punch without any damage was definitely an origin-level existence, and definitely not an early origin-level existence. In other words, this Void-Devouring Beast in front of him actually had the qualifications to fight to the death with him. Moreover, with the terrifying body of the other party that he could not easily shake, if they really fought to the death, the one who would suffer would most likely be him. It was because of this that he, as the Grand Commander of the Black Mosquito Tribe, lost his composure at this moment. "Grand Commander, I was just too eager to report the good news that I forgot to slow down for a moment. You don't have to do this, do you?" At this moment, Yixian stepped out of the Dongshu shuttle. With a flash of his body, he had already landed on the back of the 8-star ladle that was suspended in midair. He continued with an innocent face. If I had not met this brother ladle guest near the void-devouring black hole before, wouldn't I have been killed by your punch just now? If this is really the case, the Black Mosquito tribe will never be able to remove the title of the shortest-lived Holy Son in the history of the Demon Dweller tribe in the future. While speaking, Yixian waved his hand and the Dongshu shuttle that was suspended behind him was instantly absorbed into his body. At the same time, Hao Fongfong and the wretched mosquito butcher were also moved out of the shuttle by him, and landed on the back of Ladle, standing behind Yixian. It's you. Seeing Yixian, Zhuo Fengtai was suddenly stunned. A strong impulse surged in his heart and he almost attacked immediately, but in the end, he restrained himself. The opponent was now the Holy Son of the Black Mosquito tribe. It was impossible for him to sit back and do nothing, let alone there was an origin stage void-devouring beast in front of him that was not inferior to him in strength. Thinking of this, Zhuo Fengtai subconsciously glanced at Ladle under Yixian's feet and his eyelids twitched. An origin stage void-devouring beast actually made this brat stand on its back like a master, and even brought other people along. What was the difference between this and taming it? Just casually circling around the void-devouring black hole, and he could come across such a good thing? This luck was simply heaven-defying. Thinking of this, the unwillingness in Zhuo Fengtai's heart grew stronger. He was so angry that his neck was thick. Panting heavily, he reprimanded in a deep voice. Why are only the two of you back? Where is the fierce mosquito? This was clearly asking the obvious. He was really good at pretending. Yixian sneered inwardly. He spread his hands and said with a stunned expression, Chief Commander, you still don't know? The fierce mosquito has been destroyed by Zhuo and Zhuo Licheng. Zhuo Fengtai almost vomited blood on the spot. Although he was well aware of this, from a certain point of view, the fierce mosquito was indeed destroyed by Zhuo and Zhuo Licheng. He could even be included in this. However, what did he mean by destroyed? Even if he knew some inside information, there was no need to say such harsh words, right? This was clearly a deliberate provocation. Could it be that after taming this origin stage void-devouring beast, Zhuo Fengtai thought that he had something to rely on and planned to go against him openly? As these thoughts flashed through his mind, Zhuo Fengtai calmed down and stared coldly at Yixian with a playful look in his eyes. Zhang Wuji, don't forget that you are not the Black Mosquito tribe's holy son. Zhuo Hongwu is the scout commander of my Black Mosquito city. How can you slander him in public? I'll keep this in mind and look into it when Commander Zhuo returns. Thank you, Chief Commander, but what if they don't come back? Chapter 2984. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Greybone lays probing you. Zhuo Fengtai had originally forcefully suppressed the anger in his heart, but after hearing Yixian's provocative words, the monstrous anger that had just been suppressed surged again in the blink of an eye. He glared at Yixian and was about to explode. At this moment, a hearty laugh suddenly resounded in the void. The High Priest, Greybone Lay, had arrived. Ha ha ha. Zhang Wuji. You're able to obtain a spiritual power skill inheritance the first time you enter the forbidden land of the demonic saint tribe. You've finally allowed our Black Mosquito tribe to rise again. From now on, our Black Mosquito tribe is no longer the weakest tribe among the 10 great demon tribes. Instead, we've become a top tribe that can compete with the leader, the Black Nightmare tribe. Along with the hearty laughter, the High Priest's figure quietly appeared. He quietly stood in the middle of the confrontation between the Black Mosquito tribe's Grand Commander Zhuo Fengtai and Yixian. In addition, when he arrived, he had a rather subtle grasp of the situation. All of this was clearly done on purpose, causing the eyes of Grand Commander Zhuo Fengtai, who was about to explode, to flash with a bright light. A strong sense of dissatisfaction and unwillingness quietly flashed through his eyes. But even so, with the arrival of the High Priest Huegu Lei, the monstrous anger in Zhuo Fengtai's heart was suppressed again in the end. Although Huigu's cultivation base was only at the origin stage first stage, he was the great priest of a large demon tribe, so he was far better than Zhuo Fengtai, who was the tribe's great commander, in terms of using his mental power skills. Therefore, even though Zhuo Fengtai's cultivation base was at the origin stage fourth stage, the weaker Huigu had a better chance of winning if they were to fight. Moreover, Huegulu had an extraordinary relationship with the high priest of the imperial city, Wen Xingshang, who had become one of the greatest existences in the demon race. Back when Wen Xingshang was still the high priest of the Black Mosquito tribe, Huegulu had been the holy son of the tribe that he had nurtured with all his might. Although they weren't master and disciple, there wasn't much of a difference. Therefore, Zhuofengtai did not dare to offend Greybone Lei openly. After all, although the Zhua clan had a backer in the imperial city, he was just an ordinary person in the imperial court. In the entire imperial city, he could not be compared to High Priest Wen Xing, who was popular in front of the Demon King Mo1. After considering all this as the Grand Commander of the Black Mosquito tribe in the end, Zhuofengtai suppressed his anger. Was the Grand Commander of Black Mosquito tribe. Of course, the most important reason was that he felt that he would have a chance to deal with Yixian in the future. At the same time, he did not know that his only son, Zhuo Liqing, and his younger brother Zhuo Hongwu, had been killed by Yixian on their way back to the Black Mosquito tribe. Otherwise, no matter how much Zhuofengtai feared High Priest Greybone Lei, he would have been enraged and attacked. "You flatter me, High Priest. I was just a little lucky." At this moment, Yixian sighed in his heart when he saw that Grand Commander Zhuofengtai was actually suppressing his anger. He did not want to see this scene. Compared to lying low and facing a crisis that could erupt at any time in the future, he would rather face it now. At least, he could take this opportunity to force High Priest Greybone Lei to make a stand. However, no matter how unwilling Yixian was, he could not continue to provoke Zhuofengtai. Once he did so, not only Zhuofengtai, but even High Priest Greybone Lei would be suspicious. He was just a Meteor Realm nobody who had just been appointed as the Black Mosquito tribe's holy son. He should not have such courage and background. If he really did so, anyone would be suspicious of Yixian's motives. "I didn't expect you to have such an opportunity. This void-swallowing beast is at least at the origin fourth order. It is already a supreme existence that is not weaker than Commander Zhua. I'm afraid even this priest can't defeat it. Such an existence can actually hit it off with you and willingly follow you. It is really amazing. Personal luck is really mysterious and extraordinary." With Greybone Lei's level 5 source core and his background as the high priest of a large tribe, he could naturally see that the 8-star royal ladle under Yixian's feet was not like an ordinary demon's pet beast. Instead, he had branded it with a spiritual imprint and used it to forcibly control it. Therefore, these words were not just out of courtesy. They came from the bottom of his heart. Yixian even saw a flash of envy in Greybone Lei's eyes. It was obvious that Yixian was able to rely on his own luck to obtain such a powerful void-swallowing beast to follow him. Even the cunning high priest of the Black Mosquito tribe, Greyskull, couldn't help but sigh in admiration. In addition to that, what triggered even more was his eagerness for Yixian's secret mission to the Demon Emperor planet. Since this kid could deceive such a powerful mid-stage origin-level void-swallowing beast, he should have a way to deal with the extremely cunning innate spirit rabbit in the Demon Saint Forbidden Land. With this thought in mind, Greybone Lei could not hold back anymore. He did not even care that Grand Commander Zhuofengtai had just turned around and left. If he had, he would have heard the conversation between the two. Greybone Lei's eyes flashed and he immediately asked Yixian, "Little friend Wuji, the matter this high priest entrusted to you that day, may I ask?" "High priest, are you talking about that clever dead rabbit?" Yixian sneered in his heart, but he did not show it on his face. When this matter was mentioned, it was as if the hatred in his heart had been aroused. A look of indignation appeared on his face as he said hatefully, "That damn rabbit is too clever. Played tricks on me several times. Unfortunately, I couldn't catch it in the end. Otherwise, I would have skinned it alive." This result made Greybone Lei very disappointed. He was so disappointed that he even lost his composure and exclaimed softly. However, he quickly reacted. His eyes flashed, but he did not dwell on this matter. Instead, he waved his hand and withdrew the 2 spiritual imprints that he had injected into Yixian's body. Then, with a flash of his body, he flew toward the tribe's ancestral temple at the end of the Black Mosquito City. His figure had already disappeared, but his figure was still lingering. "In 3 days, I'll hold a ceremony for you to become the new holy son of the Black Mosquito tribe. In addition, during these 3 days, you can stay in the side hall of the Holy Sun in the outer courtyard of the ancestral temple. However, if there's nothing else, it's best to use these 3 days to cultivate diligently. Don't go out and leave the black mosquito star if there's nothing else. The high priest of the imperial city, Wenxing, is very worried about you. He specially told me to supervise you diligently. As the holy son of a large tribe, your cultivation is only at the meteor realm. It's really too weak. Chapter 2985. Translator. Naobo Studio Editor. Naobo Studio exposing the truth. No wonder both Suofengtai and High Priest Huegu Lu seemed to know who the Black Mosquito Tribe Holy Sun was when he had just arrived on the Black Mosquito Star. It turned out that the Devil Emperor planet had sent a message to the Black Mosquito Star's lower star network through the star's superior star network. Moreover, this message was most likely from the High Priest of the Imperial City, Wenxing. In the message, besides announcing the fact that Yi Xian was the new Holy Son of the Black Mosquito Tribe, he even specifically instructed Huegu Lu, the High Priest of the Black Mosquito Tribe, to diligently urge him to concentrate on his cultivation and not leave the Black Mosquito Star. Wenxing had mentioned this in front of Yi Xian that day. At that time he had not thought much about it, but now it seemed that these words had a deeper meaning. Otherwise, with Wenxing's prominent status as the High Priest of the Imperial City, why would he be so concerned about a newly promoted holy son of a small tribe? If he was not mistaken, the so-called diligent urging to concentrate on his cultivation was a lie. His real intention was not to leave the Black Mosquito Star. It seemed that everything he had done in the Saint Devil Forbidden area was still unable to fool him in the end. Although Wenxing didn't investigate further that day, it was obvious that he was certain that Yi Xian wouldn't be able to escape from his grasp. When he turned around, he was in the mood to deal with him at any time and carefully investigate the inside story. Huegu Lu, the High Priest of the Black Mosquito Tribe, had more or less guessed this. Therefore, when Wenxing deliberately mentioned this before he left, it was obvious that he wanted to knock some sense into Yi Xian. His purpose was to force Yi Xian to report the truth about the spirit rabbit, so as to seek his protection. As these thoughts flashed through his mind, Yi Xian's heart sank, but a faint sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. Both Wenxing and Huegu Lu might have thought that they could easily control him, but how could they know that even when they were trapped in the Devil Emperor city that day, Yi Xian was not completely powerless to resist? He just did not want to reveal some of his tricks so easily. Now that they had left the Demon Imperial City and returned to the Black Mosquito Star, the main planet of the Black Mosquito Tribe, Yi Xian had no reason to be afraid of them. Without the threat of the few Grotto Heaven Realm's supreme existences from the Imperial family, even if High Priest Wenxing of the Imperial City personally came, he was only a Grotto Heaven Realm's supreme existence. If he forced Yi Xian into a corner, they could just break up. If he really wanted to shed all pretense of cordiality, he was completely confident that he could slaughter all the devil dwellers present and then calmly leave. At that time, although the news would definitely be leaked in the Demon Imperial City, they would at most know that Yi Xian had the ability to kill a supreme existence in the Heavenly Passage realm. However, they definitely didn't know what this ability was. In that case, even if it was Yi Xian, it would not matter. Thinking of this, Yi Xian immediately calmed down. He lowered his head and glanced at the countless devil dwellers in the Black Mosquito City below, who were looking up with burning desire in their eyes. He smiled faintly and put the 8-star royal ladle into the Dongshu shuttle. Then, after putting the Dongshu shuttle into his body, he led Hao Fangfang and the wretched mosquito butcher toward the tribe's ancestral temple in the depths of the Star Mosquito City in front of the city. Among the 10 foreign tribes of the Black Mosquito Tribe, there was a demon ancestral temple on the main planet of each tribe, just like the Demon Imperial City. The high priest of each tribe was the master of the ancestral temple, and the holy son of the tribe was equivalent to the successor cultivated by the high priest. In the ancestral temple, he was equivalent to the young master. As the future high priest, the holy son of the tribe had an unshirkable share of the specific daily affairs of the entire tribe's ancestral temple. Of course, the high priest would not casually hand over the core affairs to the holy son. Generally speaking, the holy son was only responsible for the daily chores of the ancestral temple. Therefore, the holy son's living quarters were basically in the outer hall of the tribe's ancestral temple. To put it bluntly, his authority was equivalent to that of the general manager of the entire ancestral temple. When Yixian led Hao Fangfang and the wretched mosquito butcher down from the sky, there were already many ordinary priests waiting respectfully in the outer hall of the ancestral temple. These demon dwellers were priests, but in fact they were just doing the daily chores of the tribe's ancestral temple. The ancestral temple of the demon dwellers was originally just a formality. The so-called demon emperor himself was far from a godlike existence in the universe. How much meaning could this so-called demon dweller's ancestral temple have to offer sacrifices to a godlike existence? After entering the side hall of the Holy Sun, an elderly demon dweller priest who should be the most senior among the priests of the ancestral temple led Yixian's group around the huge side hall like a guide. Then, he carefully explained that as the Holy Son of the tribe, Yixian should share the daily chores of the ancestral temple and handed over a few thick account books. Yixian was not interested in this at all, but the wretched mosquito butcher behind him immediately took it with a smile. Yixian's heart skipped a beat. He immediately raised his hand and pointed at the wretched mosquito butcher. He said in a low voice, "This is Mosquito Butcher. All my affairs, big and small, have always been handled by him. In the future, such mundane affairs will be handed over to him." With that, he ignored the elderly priest's shocked reaction and turned to enter the main hall of the Holy Sun's courtyard. 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. It was now the third evening of Yixian's return to the Black Mosquito main planet. The Black Mosquito tribe's new Holy Sun ceremony would be held at noon tomorrow. At that time, all the leaders of the Black Mosquito tribe's other 9 demon dweller planets would be present to observe the Holy Sun ceremony. In the past 2 days, the entire Black Mosquito main planet was bustling with noise and celebration. The Star Mosquito main city was decorated with lanterns and colored banners. After all, the new Holy Son of the tribe had successfully inherited a certain spiritual power skill when he entered the Saint Devil Forbidden Land for the first time. Even among the top 10 demon dweller tribes, he was one of the best. Most of the demon dwellers in the Black Mosquito tribe were very happy because of this. As a celebration, it was necessary to have a grand appearance. However, under the surface of the celebration, the entire Black Mosquito main city was in turmoil. Whether it was High Priest Huegu Lu or Great Commanders Wufengtai, they did not show up in the past 2 days, nor did they summon Yixian, who was about to become the tribe's Holy Son. Everything seemed to be calm and peaceful. Even Yixian felt that he was about to successfully ascend to the position of the Black Mosquito tribe's Holy Son. However, on the evening before the Holy Sun ceremony, a shocking roar suddenly came from the Great Commander's official residence in the Black Mosquito main city without warning. It was Great Commander's Wufengtai's voice. "You brat, Zhang Wuji, I was almost fooled by you. You're clearly courting death." Roar. The furious roar shook the entire Black Mosquito main city. Following that, a murderous figure rushed out of the Great Commander's official residence and soared into the sky toward the ancestral temple. Chapter 2986. The real crisis. The past 2 days seemed peaceful, as if nothing had happened. But in reality, both Wufengtai and High Priest Huegu Lei were secretly making some moves. The latter was investigating Yixian's background. Following his identity as the chosen child of the Black Mountain Star, he had investigated all the way to the main city of Black Mountain. Wufengtai, on the other hand, did not make any unusual movements on the first day. Only the resentment in his heart could not be quelled. But as the day passed and the Black Mosquito tribe experts who were originally stationed on the ferocious mosquito bastion under Zhuo Liqing and Zhuo Honghuang still had not returned, Wufengtai finally felt that something was amiss and began to investigate. He had personally given the battleship to Zhuo Hongguo. This battleship was part of his personal collection, so no one knew better than Wufengtai about its performance. In his opinion, even if Zhuo Liqing and Zhuo Hongguo left the Demon Emperor planet later than Yixian and set off on their return journey, they definitely wouldn't be delayed for an entire day and still not arrive. Anxious and suspicious, Wufengtai immediately used his connections to contact the other 9 demon tribes, especially those that the Black Mosquito tribe had to pass through on their way back from the Demonic Emperor planet. So, from that night onwards, the other 9 demon tribes more or less sent out some demon tribe warriors to search for the whereabouts of the bountiful tongue. For the entire day, Wufengtai had been anxiously waiting for the news. Until just now, a small team of demon dwellers finally found part of the wreckage of the bountiful tongue battleship in the void. This was enough to confirm that Zhuo Liqing and Zhuanggu had met with misfortune and had died. When the news came, Zhuangtai immediately went berserk. He roared crazily and rushed out of the Black Mosquito City's commander's residence. He went straight to the side hall of the Chosen Child in the ancestral temple where Yixian was. As a fourth-level Origin Realm warrior, Zhuangtai's mighty power was almost earth-shattering. Behind him, countless demon tribe warriors in the Black Mosquito City raised their heads and looked at him in horror. "Bastard Zhangwuji, how dare you murder my son Liqing and my brother Hongwu? Today, I will crush your bones and scatter your ashes." Rumble. At this moment, Zhuangtai's entire body was covered by a boundless and surging airflow. However, in the sky there was a gigantic claw print that was like a mountain range. It carried a rumbling sound as it clenched its fist. This was clearly the rhythm of wanting to capture Yixian and slowly torture him when they returned. "Commander Zhua, if you want to accuse me of something, you can always accuse me. If you think that I took away your son Zhua Liqing's position as the Black Mosquito Holy Son, you can just say so. Don't you think it's beneath your dignity to accuse me like this?" At this moment, Yixian had already walked out of the courtyard of the Holy Sun's side hall. He stood on the peak outside the courtyard and slightly raised his head to look over. His expression was neither shocked nor panicked, and his tone was neither servile nor overbearing. However, the words that came out of his mouth were extremely clear. So clear that almost all of the countless devil cultivator experts in the Black Mosquito City heard it clearly. Behind him, the wretched mosquito butcher and Hao Fangfang stood on each side. No one knew what they were thinking. The former's eyes were shining with a crafty light, while the latter was frowning and looking at Yixian with a thoughtful expression. From time to time, she would glance at Yixian. "You still dare to be stubborn when you're about to die, ha ha ha. No matter, this commander has plenty of methods to make you confess." In the face of Yixian's rebuke, Zhuangtai, who was floating in the sky, was so angry that he laughed. During this time, the huge palm print that was rumbling from the sky did not stop for a moment. In the blink of an eye, it had already pressed down more than half of the palm print. After a while it would arrive with a loud bang. But until this time, the high priest Huegu Lei still did not appear. Yixian sneered in his heart. With a wave of his hand, he had already cast the Dongshu shuttle and suspended it in the air in front of him. Screech! In the next moment, along with a scream full of violent hostility, a huge black figure had already rushed out from the Dongshu shuttle. It was the 8-star royal ladle that was more than 100 feet in size, and was not inferior to the huge palm print that was pressing down from the sky. As soon as it appeared, it was wrapped in endless power and rushed into the sky, colliding head-on with the huge palm that was pressing down from the sky. Boom! Screech! A thunderous explosion rang out in the next instant, and the huge palm print was knocked away by the 8-star royal ladle without any suspense, dispersing in the air. Then the 8-star royal ladle did not reduce its speed. It let out a second screech and rushed toward the Black Mosquito Tribe's great commander Zhuangtai in the sky again without delay. This was clearly the rhythm of being stirred up and wanting to fight fiercely. Enough! Do you think the current situation is not chaotic enough? At this moment in the Black Mosquito Tribe's ancestral temple behind him, the high priest Huegu Lei finally arrived in the sky. As soon as he arrived, he shouted and then lowered his head to look at Yixian standing on the side of the peak below. "Zhangwuji, call back this origin void-swallowing beast. I promise that this matter will end here. Before the arrival of the high priest of the imperial city, no one will mention this matter again." After saying that, seeing Yixian frowning and waving his hand toward the sky, Huegu Lei turned his head to look at Zhuangtai in the sky and said in a deep voice, "I just learned about this matter after receiving the secret message from High Priest Wenxing. Now I can confirm that Zhua Liqing and Zhua Hongwu are indeed dead. However, the person who attacked them is definitely not Zhangwuji, but the scout fortress of the Black Mosquito ship in the front line of the demon army. Before the Fengting ship was destroyed, it sent a distress signal to the demon imperial planet, clearly indicating this point. There is no doubt that the demon army in the front line of the third universe must be in big trouble. Let's not talk about the other scout fortresses for now, but the Black Mosquito ship must have fallen into the hands of the human tribe, and the other party must have successfully sneaked into the Demon Star area. You and I can't escape the responsibility of this matter. On the demon imperial planet, The Demon Imperial Guard Commander Chanas has led the army here. When the time comes, the army will be divided into two groups. One group will thoroughly investigate the entire Black Mosquito tribe and the surrounding star areas, while the other group will directly enter the universe wormhole and head to the front line of the third universe to investigate the incident of the demon army. The High Priest of the Imperial City, Wen Xing, is also with this army. He will arrive at the Black Mosquito Star in a few days. You and I, as the High Priest and the Great Commander of the Black Mosquito tribe, had better think of a plan quickly. What? The Black Mosquito ship did it? How is this possible? When these words came out, even Zhuofengtai, the Great Commander of the Black Mosquito tribe in the sky, was completely shocked and exclaimed softly. Chapter 2987. Translator, Transin Editor. Transin in for a penny, in for a pound. When the High Priest Huegu Lei personally spoke about the shocking change in the Black Mosquito Scout Fortress, he did not deliberately avoid anything. Therefore, when his voice was loud and clear, almost all the demon dwellers in the Black Mosquito City in the distance heard it. The entire Black Mosquito City was in an uproar, and the news would spread out as fast as possible. It wouldn't be long before all the 10 demon dwellers' planets in the Black Mosquito tribe knew about it. A storm that would sweep across the entire Black Mosquito tribe, and even the entire Demon Dwellers tribe was coming. Although the terrible news brought by the High Priest Huegu Lei was shocking, the effect it had in some ways made people speechless. It was precisely because of this shocking and unexpected arrival that Grand Commander Zhuofengtai's suspicions towards Yixian disappeared in an instant. He coldly glanced at him before leaving with the High Priest. It was obvious that they were secretly discussing how to deal with this matter. At the very least, from the looks of it, the two of them hadn't cast suspicious gazes on Yixian for the time being. After confirming this, Yixian's heart calmed down slightly. After putting away the 8-star King Ladle and the Dongshu shuttle, he turned around and walked back to the Holy Sunside Hall behind him. He sat alone in a secluded room, and as his mind raced, he began to quickly think of a way to deal with it. Judging from Huiguliai's words and reaction just now, although the Fengtung ship had sent a distress signal to the Demon Emperor planet and even mentioned the Black Mosquito Scout Fortress, there shouldn't be any mention of Yixian's appearance in the distress signal. It was probably because it was too hasty. This was really lucky. Otherwise, the crisis that Yixian was facing at this moment would be much more severe. However, even though Yixian hadn't been exposed yet, since the Black Mosquito's whereabouts had been leaked, and the demon army from the Demon Emperor planet had set off, it wouldn't be long before they entered the graveyard domain through the natural wormhole that connected to the third realm of the universe. When that time came, everything would be exposed. Once the information was sent back, the entire demon domain would start a thorough investigation. Sooner or later, the investigation would eventually lead back to Yixian. After all, his appearance was too abrupt. Everything before this could not be investigated, so it was hard not to arouse suspicion. Faced with such a situation, he had only two choices. One was to leave the Black Mosquito Star immediately before the army of the Devil Imperial Star arrived. He would rush to the wormhole and leave the Devil Star area as soon as possible. He would return to the third universe controlled by the human tribe. However, if that was the case, his original plan to search for the devouring origin in the Devil Domain and even the vast first universe outside the Devil Domain would be completely ruined. Moreover, in the short term there was no possibility of this plan being carried out. After all, such a big thing had happened to the Demon Scout Corps. Not to mention the wormhole. Near the exit of the wormhole in the first universe, the demon tribe would definitely send a large number of troops to guard it. It would be very difficult to sneak in again. As for the second choice, it was to make up his mind and continue to stay on the Black Mosquito Star. This move seemed risky, but after careful consideration, Yixian finally made the decision to bide his time and stay on the Black Mosquito Star. It was not easy to come to the first universe, and now he had obtained the identity of the holy son of a large demon tribe. This would be very convenient and helpful for his upcoming search for the devouring origin. In any case, Yixian was not willing to give up so easily. As for the current crisis, on the one hand, he had two trump cards, the Headless Infant Corpse and the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn. Even if his identity was really exposed, he could just go all out. As long as Yixian used all his means, there were not many existences in the Devil Domain who could keep him here. In addition, even if the incident of the Demon Scout Corps at the frontier of the Third Universe was exposed, they might not necessarily find out about Yixian in the end. Of course, the premise was that he had to make some preparations before that. For example, he had to plant a few real high-level spies in the demon tribe. At that time, if there was any movement, he was at least confident that he would know at the first moment. If there was really an unforeseen event, he would have a buffer time to react. Thinking of this, Yixian immediately shook his head and smiled bitterly. After a period of time, the slave seal that he had put aside for a long time was finally put to use again. This time, the demon experts who would be planted with the slave seal would no longer be low-level demon experts. At the very least, they had to be existences at the level of Zhuofengtai and Hui Gulei. Otherwise, they would be worthless. The first two targets, let's start with them. With a flash of light in his eyes, Yixian made a decision in an instant. After all, I am still in the Black Mosquito tribe. As the immediate superior, Hui Gulei and Zhuofengtai are most likely to have doubts about me. Since this is the case, I might as well go all out and plant the slave seal on these two guys. Otherwise, I really can't sleep in peace. This thought made Yixian's heart beat wildly. Whether it was the great commander Zhuofengtai or the high priest Hui Gulei, they were all supreme existences of the 9th level of the origin realm. Yixian had only subdued one demon expert of this level by planting a slave seal before. That was the prince of the mosquito beast race, Xue Ben. Moreover, when he planted the slave seal on Xue Ben, he had the assistance of the Mad Mosquito Emperor, who was at least at the Heavenly Passage realm, to control the mosquito beast prince, Xue Ben, in advance. Otherwise, with Yixian's cultivation at that time, there was no possibility of success. In the past, he wouldn't have dared to plant a slave seal on the Black Mosquito tribe's high priest Hui Gulei. After all, not only was the high priest proficient in the use of mind power, but he also had a level 5 source core. This kind of existence with a high-level source core had an astonishing resistance to slave seals. However, Yixian had now completed the 5th transformation of the source core in his brain. His source core had long entered the 6th level, which surpassed Hui Gulei's. It was on the same level as the high priest of the imperial city, Wen Xing, and second only to the devil king, Mo Wen Tian. Under such circumstances, Yixian's chances of success in subduing Hui Gulei by planting a slave seal on him had greatly increased. This was why he had suddenly come up with such a bold idea. After making his decision, Yixian immediately started making preparations. To put it bluntly, he just had to condense a slave seal. Hui Gulei and Zhuofengtai were supreme existences of the 9th level of the origin realm, which meant that the slave seal he planted on them had to be at least at the 11th level, which meant that he had to repeatedly condense the slave seal 10 times. However, to be safe, Yixian decided to condense 2 12th level slave seals to deal with these two fellows. This way he could guarantee that nothing would go wrong. If he started condensing the slave seals from the beginning, even with Yixian's current power at the 6th level of the meteor realm, he would need a long time to condense 2 12th level slave seals. He was afraid that he wouldn't be able to make it in a few days. Chapter 2988. Translator, Transin Editor. Transin revealing the fangs. Since the 2 level 12 slave seals were obtained after 2 repetitive refinements from the level 10 slave seals, Yixian only spent half a day or so to complete all of this. The necessary software resources to deal with Grayskull and Zhuofengtai could be considered to be ready. However, just preparing the software was clearly far from enough. These two fellows were both supreme beings of the 9th realm, the origin realm. It was clearly not easy to successfully shoot 2 successfully condensed level 12 slave seals into their bodies. Yixian analyzed the abilities he had. Whether it was the spiritual suppression or the giant dragon roar, which he had obtained after his starry sky dragon bloodline reached the entry level, although they were all skills that could shock the mind of the enemy unexpectedly, due to the huge gap in strength between Yixian and his opponents, these two abilities were obviously not effective. As for the Fallen Sky Bow, Spiritual Lightning Technique, Annihilation Spear, Destructive Vortex, and other spiritual secret techniques, they were all offensive in nature, and were not suitable to deal with this situation. It seemed that the only way to successfully shock Hui Gulei and Zhuofengtai in a short period of time, and then take advantage of this opportunity to shoot the 2 level 12 slave seals into their bodies, was to ask for help from the Headless Infant Corpse. Even if it was not interested in doing it personally, the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn would be enough to do it on its behalf. The Weeping Soul Bloodhorn was a supreme existence that could even crush a 9-star ladybird empress of the Grotto Heaven realm. Dealing with Hue Gulei and Zhuofengtai, 2 demon experts of the Origin realm, was a piece of cake. However, it was hard to say whether this would work or not. Although the headless infant corpse had always been in Yixian's body, and had turned into a strange tattoo in the shape of a corpse lamp on the left side of Yixian's chest, the headless infant corpse had never responded directly no matter how Yixian actively tried to contact it. Therefore, Yixian was not very confident about asking for the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn's help this time. He could only give it a try. If it did not work, he would think of another plan. What surprised him was that this time, the headless infant corpse, which had always ignored his calls, actually transmitted a mysterious aura over at the first possible moment. It directly entered Yixian's sea of consciousness, exactly the same as last time. Through this mysterious imprint, Yixian could control the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn for his own use at any time. When he needed it, he only needed to activate the imprint in his sea of consciousness. At that time, the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn that had long since been refined by the headless infant corpse would naturally sense it and move according to Yixian's will. It could be said to be extremely convenient. The only pity was that this kind of imprint was a one-time consumable. Yixian knew that once it was activated, this imprint would turn into a mysterious and unknown force and quickly enter the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn's body, never to be seen again. Such a powerful Weeping Soul Bloodhorn could only be temporarily controlled every time. He could not use its terrifying supreme power to his heart's content. This made Yixian feel quite helpless, and he could not help but feel a strong sense of regret in his heart. While he was sighing, a flash of inspiration suddenly flashed in his mind. As his eyes lit up, a kind of sudden enlightenment was like a cold soft light in the moonlight, covering the sea of consciousness in an instant, making his mind suddenly shocked. At this moment, Yixian's state of mind was unexpectedly enlightened. He was inexplicably open-minded and bright, and his entire heart was filled with an endless sense of heroism. No matter how powerful the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn was, it was still an external object in the end. Perhaps it was because he had recently encountered too many difficult situations that he was unable to resolve with his current cultivation. Yixian pondered for a moment and suddenly realized that he had unknowingly developed a faint sense of reliance on the headless infant corpse and the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn. Every time a major dilemma appeared, he would subconsciously think of them. This was clearly the rhythm of treating the headless infant corpse and the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn as some kind of trump card and reliance under the influence of imperceptible influence. Although this was originally a fact, if he really had this kind of dependence, then it would obviously be harmful to Yixian's future growth. He would completely lose the heart of an expert. But at this moment, as this light flashed in his mind, Yixian finally realized this point as if he had an epiphany. At this moment he thought all this through, and even his state of mind had a little elevation. A feeling of loosening the bottleneck of the realm came straight to his heart. The cultivation realm of a cultivator could not only be improved by diligent cultivation day after day. Occasionally, a thorough understanding of the state of mind would also loosen the bottleneck of the realm. If one could seize this opportunity, breaking through in one fell swoop was not a problem. At this moment, Yixian clearly encountered such an opportunity. Overjoyed in his heart, he immediately sat down cross-legged on the ground, closed his eyes, and entered a mysterious state of cultivation. This time, Yixian did not absorb a drop of the star core source energy. He was completely sorting out his state of mind and figuring out the mysterious feeling like he had just had an epiphany. Unknowingly, half an hour had passed. At this time, Yixian had completely forgotten everything. His state of mind was clear, as if he was in a bright place untainted by dust. This kind of breakthrough of the state of mind that led to the elevation of one's cultivation realm, and the realization of the advancement of one's cultivation power was extremely mysterious. It was the first time that Yixian had encountered this kind of breakthrough. Everything was just a kind of trial and error for him now. However, he finally grasped this opportunity. At this moment, when the familiar prompt of the Devouring system suddenly sounded in his mind, Yixian, who had entered a state of forgetfulness, trembled slightly, and his consciousness completely returned to normal. Ding! Congratulations to the host. Your realm has increased. Current realm. Level 7 of the Meteor Realm. Level 7, this meant that he had finally entered the late stage of the Meteor Realm. With another 2 small breakthroughs, he would enter the third realm of the starry realm, the satellite realm. When these thoughts flashed through his mind, Yixian had already opened his eyes slightly, and there was a strange light in his eyes. He was in an extremely good mood. Coincidentally, my state of mind has improved, and my realm has broken through. It is a double blessing. At this time, it is the best time to completely take down Hui Gulei and Zhuofengtai, and get rid of all worries. With a slight shake of his body, Yixian stood up from the ground and muttered to himself. A firm light burst out from his eyes, and there was a cold light in them. As he stepped forward, he pushed open the door and walked out. I have endured in this black mosquito star for a long time. Now it is finally time to show my fangs. Chapter 2989. Translator, Transin Editor. Transin come to resolve doubts. Although night had fallen, the high priest of the black mosquito tribe, Hui Gulu, was still in the side hall of the ancestral temple, discussing some important matters with Zhuofengtai and Zhuofengtai. Although the two of them were friendly on the surface, they had been secretly scheming against each other. One of them was the high priest, but in fact he controlled more than half of the black mosquito tribe. The other was unwilling to see his authority diluted, so he had been looking for an opportunity to reverse the situation and completely take control of the black mosquito tribe. Even so, the black mosquito tribe was facing a sudden change, and they did not know if the fall of the black mosquito ship would affect the entire tribe. As the high priest and great commander, Zhuofengtai and Hui Gulei did not have any reservations in dealing with this matter. It could be said that they worked hand in hand without any hindrance. If that wasn't the case, they wouldn't have talked until nightfall and still hadn't dispersed. The inner hall of the ancestral temple was an important place in the tribe. Even the ordinary priests in the ancestral temple were not allowed to enter at will. However, as the new holy son of the black mosquito tribe, Yixian had no problem entering and exiting this place. After entering the courtyard of the ancestral temple, the guards of the ancestral temple did not stop him and let him go straight in. Along the way, Yixian kept thinking. At least, he had to find a valid reason to visit the high priest in the middle of the night. However, he soon felt relieved. After laughing silently, he threw this thought to the back of his mind and did not think about it anymore. Anyway, sooner or later they would fall out with each other. Why should he waste the effort? With the terrifying power of the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn, Hui Gulu and Zhuofengtai were only 2 Origin Realm experts. When the time came, Yixian only needed to use the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn. Under the suppression of the qi, the two of them would not even have the chance to turn around and escape. They would be completely bound and unable to move in an instant. With this thought in mind, Yixian immediately relaxed. Although he was unwilling to rely too much on the power of the Weeping Soul Blood Dragon and the headless infant corpse, he had only been in space for a short period of time. Moreover, he had no choice but to face 2 terrifying existences at the 9th level of the Origin Realm. Facing such an opponent with such a huge disparity in strength, it was understandable and acceptable to rely on external forces. While he was thinking, the door to the inner hall of the ancestral temple was already in sight. Inside the hall was a small hall with some doors on both sides. At this time, the window of the door on the left was clearly lit, but there was no one outside the hall. Zhuofengtai and Hui Gulei were secretly discussing important matters, so the priests of the ancestral temple who were originally serving here must have been driven away. This would make things easier for Yixian. After calming himself down, Yixian took a deep breath and stepped into the inner hall of the ancestral temple. He then turned around and walked straight to the lit door. As soon as he stepped into the room, he looked up and saw Zhuofengtai and Hui Gulei chatting softly while sipping spirit tea. The two of them sat facing each other across the table, and the atmosphere seemed to be quite harmonious. However, when they looked up and saw Yixian suddenly appear, they were surprised and slightly stunned. "What are you doing here? Don't forget that before the ceremony, you were not the holy son of the Black Mosquito tribe. How can you come and go as you please in the ancestral temple?" After coming back to his senses, Zhuofengtai's face immediately darkened. He snorted coldly and glanced sideways at Yixian, who had stepped into the room. His tone was extremely unfriendly. On the other side, High Priest Hui Gulei slightly frowned and was about to ask Yixian why he had come. However, the latter spoke first with a faint smile on his face, as if he was talking about a trivial matter. "The reason why I am here is to answer your question." As you said, Zuolicheng and Zhuanggu, as well as all the demon scouts on the Fengting ship, were all killed by me. To be exact, more than half of them were killed when the Black Mosquito Tribe and the Black Wind Tribe's super star-destroying cannons destroyed the Fengtung ship. The other half were killed by my pet army, including your son and your brother. Silence. A deathly silence. As Yixian's words left his mouth, Suofengtai and Greybone both subconsciously opened their mouths wide. They looked at him in astonishment, and even their eyes flickered with a suspicious light. That kind of look clearly gave people the feeling that they were looking at a lunatic. Obviously, the two of them did not believe what he said. They did not hesitate at all and directly regarded him as crazy talk. After a full 2 breaths of time, Suofengtai finally came back to his senses. He realized that he'd been teased and provoked by Yixian in front of him. In his embarrassment, he instantly flew into a rage and roared, "Stinking brat, you're courting death!" Before his voice died away, Suofengtai had already raised his right hand and slapped with all his strength. "You are the one courting death." Yixian's face suddenly became serious, and he retorted in a deep voice. At the same time, he did not hesitate to activate the mysterious mark in his mind. In less than half an instant, a slight but intense low buzzing sound had already enveloped the entire large house. A blood-colored waterfall whizzed out from Yixian's body and grew with the wind. In the blink of an eye, it was about 30 feet long, hovering above the house, pouring out a majestic and mighty aura. In an instant, it dissolved Suofengtai's palm power into nothingness. Weeping Soul Bloodhorn? This is impossible. What is going on? The aura of this big curved horn is at least beyond the Grotto Heaven realm. How can there be such an existence? Almost at the same time, Suofengtai and Huigu Lei's expressions had changed dramatically, and they exclaimed in horror together. Although the latter had roughly sensed the level of the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn, he obviously did not know its origin, but the high priest of the Black Mosquito Tribe, Huigu Lei, was different. As soon as the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn appeared, his mind flashed one after another, and he instantly understood everything. After the first exclamation came out, he turned his head in horror and looked at the calm Yixian with a ferocious expression. "So the person who ruined my plans on Black Mountain Star was actually you? It seems that what you said before about the 2 scout fortresses of the Black Mosquito ship and the Black Wind ship should also be true. Damn guy, as a demon cultivator, you actually betrayed your tribe to the human race." "Sorry, I was originally a human, but I swallowed a lot of demon cultivators' brain nuclei, so I grew one in my head." Shrugging his shoulders, Yixian shook his head and threw out another heavy bomb. Seeing the 2 people opposite him shocked again, he couldn't help but smile bitterly and sigh faintly. "Don't look at me like that, you are just too confident. Who said that human cultivators can't have demon nuclei? Traditional ideas kill people." Chapter 2990. Translator, Henny Translations Editor. Henny Translations. Cunning old fox. When the 2 level 12 slave seals entered Suofengtai's and Huigu Lei's foreheads at the same time and disappeared in a flash, the 2 fellows' eyes became blurry. The shock and fury on their faces started to dissipate slowly. It was obvious that the slave seals had entered their brains quickly and successfully entered their mind source cores to begin the process of enslaving and refining them. Although Suofengtai and Huigu were both supreme existences of the 9th Great Realm, the Origin Realm, they didn't seem to be so weak. However, in reality, if it wasn't for the suppression of the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn, which surpassed the Heavenly Passage Realm, Yixian wouldn't have been able to succeed. The 2 slave seals that had shot out hadn't even touched Suofengtai and Huigu Lei's skin. Therefore, this seemingly easy situation and results were entirely due to the use of the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn, which was a terrifying being whose strength surpassed the Heavenly Passage Realm. This wasn't surprising at all. Besides, the reason why these 2 fellows had reacted so quickly was also because Yixian's cultivation base was a little weaker, as he was only at the 2nd level of the Meteor Realm. However, the grade of his mind source core wasn't low. It had already reached the 6th level. In the entire demon race, his mind source core was second only to the Demon King Mo Wentian and was on par with the High Priest Wenxing and a few others. Between Suofengtai and Huigu Lei, even though Huigu Lei was the High Priest, his mind source core was only at the 5th level. Under the circumstances, they naturally wouldn't be able to resist the level 12 slave seals that Yixian had condensed using his level 6 mind source core multiple times. As long as the slave seals successfully entered their bodies, there would be no suspense in the final outcome. However, these two fellows were origin-grade entities after all, so the source cores in their heads contained boundless spirit origin source power. Even with the power of a grade 12 slave mark, it would take an extraordinary amount of time to refine all of them and brand them with the enslavement mark. Yixian was not in a hurry. He slowly walked to the table at the side and pulled out a chair to sit down. Then, he took out a small clean cup and poured himself a cup. Then he began to taste the spirit tea brewed by either Zhuofengtai or Hui Gulei. During this process, he never withdrew the weeping soul bloodhorn that was hovering in the air. After all, their targets this time were all supreme existences at the origin realm. Their abilities were far superior to the demon experts that Yixian had enslaved in the past. If they were plotting something and took the weeping soul bloodhorn, it would be no different from courting death. After about half an hour, the two grade 12 slave marks finally completed the process of enslaving and refining the source cores in Zhuofengtai and Hui Gulei's heads. The blurred look in their eyes slowly faded and they regained their clarity. Then they respectfully walked to Yixian and stood on either side of him with their hands by their sides. They looked like they were waiting for orders and did not say a single word of nonsense. This was the normal behavior after being enslaved by a slave mark. Yixian did not know what was wrong with the wretched mosquito butcher. The first time he was pretending, but the second time he was clearly enslaved. In the end, he did not behave properly for more than a few days. Not long after, he began to behave strangely again. When he returned, he really had to find some time to properly investigate what was wrong with this guy. Of course, the reason Yixian had brought him out of the Dongshu shuttle this time was actually to test him. If he made any strange movements, Yixian would be able to detect it in an instant through the connection between him and the slave mark in his head. Unfortunately, Yixian did not know whether that guy really had a problem, or whether he would easily give himself away on his own initiative. After being slightly distracted, Yixian quickly threw the matter of the wretched mosquito butcher to the back of his mind. He swept his gaze over and examined Zhuofengtai and Hui Gulei, who were standing on either side of him. After confirming that there was no problem, he felt relieved. He waved his hand and said, "In the future, when there are other people around, you can still call me Zhang Wuji. The word master cannot be heard by anyone else. In addition, when you are in public, your words and actions must be the same as usual. The entire Black Mosquito Tribe's affairs will still be handled by the two of you. Just do as usual." Facing this order, Zhuofengtai and Hui Gulei immediately responded respectfully. Yixian was quite at ease with this point. He never thought that the two of them would appear abnormal in front of others, so much so that they would reveal themselves. After all, Yixian had personally planted more than 10,000 slave seals, and his experience was already very rich. Yixian waved his hand and shot a psychic power at the weeping soul bloody horn. After summoning it back into his body, he immediately fell into deep thought. Now, these two guys were his demon slaves. If there was anything he did not understand, Yixian could ask them casually, and the answers he got would be absolutely true. There was no possibility of being fooled. In this case, Yixian was naturally a little impatient. At this moment, he was thinking about the doubts in his mind. He thought that if he could ask them one by one in detail and finally get all the answers, it would be a very pleasant thing. Unfortunately, after thinking about it for a while, he found that there were not many questions he needed these two guys to answer in a short time. For example, when he was on the way to the Demon Emperor Star, Zuoliqing and Zhuohangguo attacked him. Whether it was related to Zhuofengtai or not was simply superfluous. There was no need to ask them in detail. In the end, Yixian glanced at Hui Gulei. He had 3 questions about this old guy. First, it was about the countless Weeping Soul beasts in the Weeping Soul cave under the Black Mountain Star, and the Weeping Soul bloody horn that had been refined by the headless baby corpse. Second, it was about the 2 spiritual marks that Hui Gulei gave to Yixian before, asking him to take the spirit rabbit transformed by the demon soul pupil out of the Saint Devil forbidden area. The last one was how close the relationship between High Priest Wenxing and Hui Gulei was. Before this, did Wenxing privately reveal to Hui Gulei any words or ideas related to Yixian? These 3 questions Yixian asked Hui Gulei one by one, and the latter immediately gave a detailed answer. As for the second question, the matter of the spirit rabbit formed by the demonic soul pupil, there was nothing strange about it. It was just as Hui Gulei had said before. The last time he entered the Saint Demon Forbidden Area, he had exhausted all his effort but was unable to successfully trap it. Furthermore, during the month of pursuit, he had discovered that this spirit rabbit was very interested in high-level mental energy and was extremely close to it. That was why he asked Yixian to take it out of the forbidden area. However, the answers to the first and third questions surprised Yixian, and his face immediately became gloomy. For words appeared in his mind as if it was a conditioned reflex. Chapter 2991. Big Spender. After asking, Yixian found out that whether it was the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn, the Weeping Soul Beast, or the Weeping Soul Beast, Huegulu actually didn't know their specific uses and origins. Even though special spatial towers were given to him by High Priest Wenxing. In other words, the one who really needed those Weeping Soul Beasts and knew about the existence of the Weeping Soul Bloodhorn was actually Wenxing. Huegulu was just following orders. This led to the answer to the third question. For Wenxing to be able to hand over such an important and secretive matter to Huegulu, the relationship between the two was clearly not ordinary. As a matter of fact, it was Wenxing, the high priest of the Black Mosquito tribe, who had given him advice to become the holy son of the Black Mosquito tribe. It was not an exaggeration to say that the two of them were master and disciple. Because of this, the inside information and secrets that the Grey Bone Rains knew about Yixian were naturally far from what Grand Commanders Wufengtai could compare to. As the High Priest, he could use the space network of the Black Mosquito Star at any time to connect to the upper-level star network of the Devil Emperor Star and get in touch with Wenxing. Even though this kind of star network cross-level communication consumed quite a bit of energy, Huegulu clearly didn't care about this. Just today alone, he had already contacted Wenxing twice. Overall, one thing was absolutely certain, and that was that Wenxing had no intention of letting Yixian go. Over the past few days, he had been reminding them to keep an eye on Yixian. Once he returned, they could not let him leave Black Mosquito Star. The old man had even revealed to Grey Bone Rain that not only did Yixian have a large number of multipupil sense crystals on him, there was also a high chance that he was hiding some even more valuable secrets. This time, he was following the fleet of the Royal Demonkin Fleet, which was led by Chanas, the commander of the Demonkin Royal Guards. They had already departed from the Demonkin Royal Star, and would arrive at the Black Mosquito Star in a few days. Their fundamental purpose was to capture Yixian and plunder the mini-pupil crystal that he had intercepted. They even resorted to extreme means to extort a confession from Yixian and dig out the secrets that he knew. Such a truth was something that even Yixian himself didn't expect. Although Yixian realized that Wenxing was definitely not as simple as he seemed on the surface and was not easy to fool, he had even vaguely guessed that the other party might have already targeted him, but he had never expected that the old fox would be so ruthless and decisive. He had just returned to Black Mosquito Star, and the old fox had immediately followed him. Furthermore, their intentions were clear as day. They planned to clean up Yixian once and for all. If he hadn't heard all of this from Huegulu, Yixian might really have been tricked by the cunning Wenxing in a moment of carelessness when the Imperial fleet arrived. In terms of cunning and ruthlessness, Wenxing, that old fox, is really one of the best. Even I was almost fooled by him. Yixian's eyes flashed as he muttered to himself in a low voice. Although there was a smile at the corners of his mouth, it clearly revealed an increasingly cold and gloomy feeling. However, from now on the entire Black Mosquito Star, and even the entire Black Mosquito tribe, is already my territory. So what if he arrives with the Imperial fleet? At that time it's hard to say who will be tricking who. Speaking of this, Yixian seemed to have suddenly thought of something. He turned his head and glanced at Wufengtai and Huegulu again. He ordered, "Immediately inform the other 9 Demonkin planets in the tribe. The Holy Sun ceremony will be brought forward one day. Everyone must arrive at the Black Mosquito Star. The ceremony will begin at sunrise the day after tomorrow. In addition, all the team leaders of the 9 Demonkin planets and their main deputies, including the higher-ups of the Black Hole Realm and above, must be present. Not a single one of them can be missing. Also, get me a list of all the Demonkin experts of the Black Hole Realm and above in the 10 Demonkin planets, including the Black Mosquito Star. Of course, there is no need for the two of you." The purpose of Yixian's name on the list was obvious. He planned to plant a slave seal on all the Demonkin experts of the Black Hole Realm, and above in the Black Mosquito tribe, and make them his slaves. This was a big deal. Yixian had never thought of this before. However, on one hand, Wen Xing had forced him to do this. On the other hand, with Zuofengtai and Huigulu being subdued, he was very confident that he could achieve this easily. As long as he could subdue all of the demon cultivator experts at the Black Hole Realm and above within the 10 demon cultivator stars, without exception, then the entire Black Mosquito tribe would fall into Yixian's hands. At that time, no matter what he wanted to change or do, through the hands of the Black Hole Realm experts of the 10 Demonkin planets, he would be able to implement it immediately. It could be said that at that time, the entire Black Mosquito tribe would be gathered together like never before. They would be as solid as an iron bucket, and in this territory, Yixian would be able to do as he pleased without any hindrance. In this way, even if Wen Xing brought an entire fleet of the demon royal family to descend, and even shed all pretense of cordiality to deal with him, it would still be impossible for him to casually restrain Yixian. While Yixian was muttering to himself, Huigu and Zuofengtai, who were busy drafting the list, passed it over in less than half an incense stick's worth of time. Yixian casually received it, lowered his head, and carefully reviewed it. Although the Black Mosquito star zone occupied by the Black Mosquito tribe was vast and had countless planets, many of which were inhabited by life, 99% of them were Devil Beast planets. As for the Devil tribe planets including the Black Mosquito star, there were a total of 10 planets. Among these 10 demon dweller planets, there were only 3 or 4 demon dweller experts above the Black Hole Realm in the other 9 demon dweller planets under the jurisdiction of the tribes. They were the team leaders, the vice city lords, 1 or 2 scout commanders, or other important people. At a glance, there were a total of 32 Black Hole Realm Demonkin experts in the 9 Demonkin planets. As for the Black Mosquito star, aside from the Origin Realm High Priest Huigu Lu and Grand Commanders Zuofengtai, the number of Black Hole Realm demon dwellers on the Black Mosquito star was double that of the other 9 stars. In total, there were 40 Demonkin experts of the Black Hole Realm and above in the entire 10 planets of the Black Mosquito tribe. Of course, this was only referring to the Black Hole Realm experts who held a certain amount of authority in the 10 great devil realms. In fact, in such a large devil tribe, it was impossible for there to be only 40 existences above the Black Hole Realm. It was even possible to multiply it a few more times. However, those Black Hole Realm experts were all commoners. It was even possible that they had already gone into seclusion, so it didn't affect Yixian's control over the entire Black Mosquito tribe. Even if there was, Yixian didn't seem to be able to use this kind of official channel to forcefully gather them. Therefore, there was no need to care about the Black Hole Realm experts. Chapter 2992. Translator. Transin Editor. Transin Double Blessings, 40 level 9 slave seals, huh? There's only 1 day left, so it's a little too tight. Luckily, I have some in stock, so there are only about 20 seals that I need to condense at the last minute. With my current speed, I should be able to do it. After muttering to himself for a while, Yixian went through all the key points of the entire matter. After confirming that there were no omissions, he remembered that he needed the slave seal to subdue the 40 Black Hole Realm demon cultivator experts and muttered to himself. After saying that, he raised his head and looked at Huigu Lu and Zuofengtai, who were quietly waiting at the side. He waved his hand and said, "Summon the 7 fellows from the Black Mosquito star. Let's deal with them first." Among the 7, there were 2 Black Hole Realm demons at the Great Perfection Stage 9 Black Hole Realm. One of them was the city lord of the Black Mosquito City, named Qi Ben. The other was the scout commander of the Black Mosquito City, named Hong Zhan. As for the other 5, they were either the vice city lords or the heads of important departments in the Black Mosquito City. Their cultivations ranged from Black Hole Realm Level 3 to Black Hole Realm Level 7. In Yixian's stock of slave seals, there were a few from Level 1 to Level 11. The higher the level of the slave seal, the lesser the number of slave seals. The Black Hole Realm was the 8th realm, so it required at least a Level 8 slave seal to successfully refine the source core in the brain of a being of this level. For safety's sake, Yixian had always planted a slave seal after raising the level of the slave seal. He had exactly 12 level 9 slave seals in his stock. In addition to the 8 level 10 slave seals that were used to deal with the Great Perfection Stage 9 Black Hole Realm demons, there were a total of 20 slave seals that were suitable for him to use in this plan. After dealing with the 7 Black Hole Realm demons, Yixian had to hurry up and condense the remaining 20 slave seals before tomorrow night. In the time it took to eat a meal, the 7 black hole realm demons on the black mosquito star had all arrived. Yixian subdued every single one that came. There was no suspense in the process, with Hui Gulei and Zuofengtai suppressing them. With their black hole realm cultivation, they couldn't do anything. Half an hour later, when Yixian stood up to leave, a group of 9 people swarmed to send him off. High Priest Hui Gulei and Great Commander Zuofengtai were at the front, followed by Black Mosquito City's City Lord Qi Ben and Black Mosquito City's Demon Race Scout Commander Hong Zhan and the others. These 9 people could basically represent the power and influence of the Black Mosquito Star, or even the entire Black Mosquito tribe. However, at this moment, not only were they all sent to Yixian, but their expressions were also clearly respectful and cautious. This scene was so strange that some of the patrolling guards of the ancestral temple were dumbfounded. They looked at each other speechless. From this moment on, most of them had started to suspect Yixian's true identity, such as the illegitimate son of the Demon King. Otherwise, why would the High Priest and Great Commander be so subservient to him? Yixian wasn't interested in any of this. These were all insignificant characters. Even if they knew the truth, it wouldn't affect Yixian at all. After returning to the Saint's Side Hall, Yixian immediately went to his room and told the wretched mosquito slayer not to disturb him unless it was necessary. Then he closed the door and sat cross-legged on the ground, closed his eyes, and entered a cultivation state. He started to condense the 29th grade slave seals in a hurry. The so-called slave seals were actually a kind of perfect and stable spiritual imprint that was condensed using a special method using mind power. Therefore, condensing a slave seal would consume the source power of Yixian's mind power from the source core in his brain. The higher the level of the slave seal condensed, the greater the consumption. This time Yixian wanted to condense 29th grade slave seals in one go. The huge consumption was obvious. If it were any other time, it wouldn't be a big deal. It wasn't like he hadn't condensed a large amount of slaves before. However, now that the crisis was approaching, Yixian had to be in his best condition at all times. Therefore, after sitting cross-legged, he immediately took out a small spatial pagoda from the undying world in his body. With a thought, he summoned 10,000 weeping soul beasts from the pagoda. He immediately ordered the devouring system to absorb the source power of the 10,000 weeping soul beasts at the same time. This process quickly unfolded, and the system's absorption of the spirit source energy continuously surged into the spirit source core in Yixian's sea of consciousness. Yixian, on the other hand, didn't pay attention to all of this. All of his energy was poured into the refinement of the 9th level slave seal, and even the passage of time had been forgotten by him at this moment. Ding! Congratulations to the host. Realm leveled up. Current realm. Level 8 Meteor Realm. After an unknown amount of time, when Yixian finally condensed the last level 9 slave seal, his heart relaxed and he subconsciously returned. He exited his cultivation state and suddenly opened his eyes. A familiar system notification suddenly sounded out in his mind. Realm leveled up? Level 8 Meteor Realm? When these words flashed in his mind, Yixian was stunned on the spot. He had just unexpectedly advanced to level 7 Meteor Realm a day ago because of a breakthrough in his mental state. Okay? How long had it been? He had actually broken through again? Did it have to be so fast? Moreover, it didn't seem like he had been cultivating before this. He had only condensed the slave seals. How could it cause his cultivation to level up because of a breakthrough? Filled with bewilderment and confusion, Yixian's consciousness quickly immersed itself in his mind and started to investigate. Sure enough, the source core, the fallen sky bow, the golden dragon scales and the void essence crystal were floating in the air. These represented Yixian's realm and cultivation base in the void dimension fragment, which was a primordial technique. Compared to before, it was even more majestic. Yixian's current cultivation base had indeed advanced to level 8 Meteor Realm. As for the reason for this unexpected breakthrough, he quickly found it. The source core floating in the air above Yixian's mind had been black at first. However, as it transformed and evolved again and again, a hint of purple had slowly appeared amidst Yixian's black source core, which was getting denser and denser. Not long ago, it had already been mostly purple with a hint of black in between. But now, the last traces of black in the origin core had clearly disappeared. It was likely that the spirit source energy provided by the 10,000 weeping soul beasts just now had allowed it to reach a certain critical point. In addition, Yi Xian was using all his strength to condense the slave seal, so the flow of the spirit source within the origin core had accelerated. Thus, unknowingly, his origin core had completed some kind of unknown change. It was precisely this transformation that had caused Yi Xian's unexpected breakthrough in his cultivation, based like a chain reaction. What made Yi Xian's heart pound even more was that, as the source core had turned from a thick purple with a few traces of black to a full purple, he had a strong intuition that the source core's sixth transformation wouldn't be too far away. Chapter 2993. Holy Sun Ceremony. Pleasantly surprised, Yi Xian's consciousness quickly withdrew from his sea of consciousness. With a wave of his hand, he collected all the black weeping soul horns on the ground into a small space box. As usual, he threw it into a corner of the undying world in his body. Until now, Yi Xian still didn't know what these weeping soul horns were used for. He didn't even know how the large number of weeping soul beasts in the underground weeping soul cave came to be. However, these horns were related to the weeping soul bloodhorns after all. Perhaps they could be of great use in the future. Therefore, every time Yi Xian took out the weeping soul beasts to absorb the spiritual origin energy, he would put away all the weeping soul horns that grew out of them. After doing all this, he suddenly remembered the problem of time. He pushed open the door and walked out of the room. Only then did he realize that it was still night outside. Obviously, it wasn't night anymore. It was clearly the second night. As expected, 29th level slave seals took an entire day and night of Yi Xian's time. Fortunately, he was able to complete them in time. According to what he told Hui Gulu and Zhuofengtai yesterday, the Holy Sun ceremony would be held after sunrise tomorrow. Presumably, the ceremony venue at the ancestral temple peak would be ready. In addition, the Black Hole Realm demon experts from the other 9 demon planets of the Black Mosquito tribe should have all arrived. Not only did this include Tu Shan of the Black Mountain planet, who had been subdued by Yi Xian as a demon slave, but also Hao Fangfang's father, Hao Deshuang of the Black Roar planet. Thinking of the latter, Yi Xian couldn't help but have a strange feeling in his heart. Although he didn't know Hao Deshuang, he was after all Hao Fangfang's father. Although this kid couldn't be considered as Yi Xian's close friend, Hao Fangfang had treated Yi Xian very well from the beginning to the end. Could even be said that she was quite righteous. In this sort of situation, knowing that the other party was Hao Fangfang's father, Yi Xian felt that it wasn't easy to make a move on him. Even though it was impossible for Hao Fangfang to know the truth, it was still difficult for Yi Xian to grit his teeth and cross this hurdle in his heart. One must have a clear conscience when doing things for others. Ordinary people took this as an example. Obviously, the importance of the heart was even more important for practitioners who fought against the heavens. With this thought in mind, Yi Xian couldn't help but look a little depressed. When he walked out of the side hall, although Hao Fangfang didn't see him, the wretched mosquito butcher had a big smile on his face. He immediately trotted over to greet him. His face was flushed with excitement as if he had just been injected with chicken blood. "Master, my master, this time we can hold our heads up high. Grand burial. Ba, it should be a grand ceremony. Tisk tsk, you didn't see the grand ceremony venue on the peak of the ancestral temple. That's what you call grand. I heard that this time the leaders of the other 9 planets of the Black Mosquito tribe, as well as the deputy castellans and so on, are all here. The Holy Sun ceremony in the past didn't have this kind of extravagance. Anyway, master, this time you've gained a lot of face. You've gained a lot of face. Ordinary people's protection can't compare to this." This fellow was still as unreliable as ever. He was full of warships, and after just a few words, he had turned the grand ceremony into a grand funeral. In the end, he even compared Yi Xian's face to that of an ordinary person's. When Yi Xian heard this, he didn't manage to catch his breath and almost fainted on the spot. Just as he was about to reprimand him, a figure walked toward him from the front of the side hall. Judging from the priest's attire of the ancestral temple, he must have been sent by the Grey Bone tribe. "Lord Holy Sun, the High Priest and the Chief Commander have invited you in. Also, the leaders of the other 9 planets of the tribe, the deputy castellans and other guests are all here. They're all waiting for you." As he approached, the ancestral temple priest bowed slightly in a very natural manner. His tone was respectful, and he even lowered his head. This was definitely not the attitude he should have toward the holy son of the tribe. It was a little too modest. If he was not mistaken, this guy must have heard the rumor spread by the guards of the ancestral temple last night. He was most likely thinking that Yi Xian might be the illegitimate son of the demon emperor. They're all here. Yi Xian was stunned for a moment before reacting. It was obvious that Grayskull and Zhuofengtai had gathered all of these black hole realm existences together. Their intentions were clearly the same as last night. After all, the Holy Sun ceremony tomorrow was a public event. It was not convenient to plant a slave seal on them. After the ceremony, these higher-ups of the Black Mosquito tribe, who were unwilling to come, would most likely leave the Black Mosquito tribe immediately. It seemed that these two guys were quite considerate. He did not have to worry about them at all. After secretly praising in his heart, Yi Xian nodded his head and took the lead to leave. The ancestral temple priest wanted to follow him, but he was stopped by the wretched mosquito butcher. He glared at the priest and said, "Why are you in such a hurry? Are you in a hurry to reincarnate? I'm Mosquito Butcher, and I'm the chief steward of the saint. Even if it's my reincarnation, the saint has taken the lead, and the second person behind him can only be me. You're just an errand boy. How dare you cut the queue?" The ancestral temple priest was caught off guard and was stunned. Yi Xian, who just walked out of the courtyard, had a dark expression on his face. He almost fell head first. What happened next was needless to say. With the suppression of Zhuofengtai and Huegulu, as well as the help of the 7 Black Hole Realm experts who had been subdued by Yi Xian as demon slaves, the remaining 30 Black Hole Realm experts from the Black Hole Realm from the Black Mosquito tribe were all successfully planted with slave seals by Yi Xian. To be precise, there were 31 of them. 2 were missing. One was Xiong Haizi from the Black Mountain tribe, who was originally on the same side. The other was Hao Fengfeng's father, Hao Deshuang. Although he had also come to the Black Mosquito tribe, he was dragged away by Hao Fengfeng to leave the inn in the Black Mosquito city in the evening. Huegulu had not returned when he sent someone to invite him, so he was absent. This coincidence made Yi Xian feel relieved. It helped him make a choice. Since it was the will of the heavens, he would go with the flow. He did not have to worry about it anymore. 31 slave seals were successfully planted. The whole process took only a few minutes. Everything went smoothly. Only when he followed Yi Xian into the ancestral temple did he tactfully retreat to the corner of the wretched mosquito butcher. As he watched all of this happen with his own eyes, the light in his eyes clearly revealed a sense of coldness. Even the corners of his mouth seemed to have an imperceptible sneer, and in a certain instant it seemed to have disappeared. Yi Xian did not notice any of this. After a few words as usual, he immediately returned to the Holy Sun's side hall. Chapter 2994. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The arrival of the royal fleet the next day before the sky brightened. It was clearly midnight, but in the entire Black Mosquito City, there were already a large number of demon cultivators who had deliberately woken up early, or perhaps had not slept at all. They all walked out of their houses and rushed toward the Black Mosquito Peak, where the Black Mosquito Ancestral Temple was located. Although the saint ceremony was a good thing for others, they could only watch and feel the atmosphere. However, more than 80% of the demon dwellers in the Black Mosquito City had come to watch the ceremony. As for the remaining 20%, most of them had no choice but to give it up because they were unable to free themselves. After all, the former holy son of the Black Mosquito tribe had always been at the bottom among all the holy sons of the 10 foreign tribes of the demon tribe. Not only did he not gain anything from entering the forbidden land of Saint Devil 3 times in a row, but he also lost the honor of being a holy son because of this. When he returned to the Black Mosquito Star from the Demon Royal Star for the last time, he was killed by the furious Zhuofengtai. He was the first and only saint in the history of the demon race to be killed by his own tribe's grand commander in such a humiliating manner. Because of this, the Black Mosquito tribe had been ridiculed for more than 10 years. None of the demons in the tribe could hold their heads high anymore. However, all of this had been completely changed because of Zhang Wuji's sudden appearance. When he entered the forbidden land of the demonic saint tribe for the first time, he inherited a spiritual power skill. Even the high priest of the imperial city, Wen Xing, and the demon king praised him. The humiliation of being the Black Mosquito tribe's last holy son was finally thrown away. Just based on this point alone, the demon cultivators in the Black Mosquito City, and even the many cities on the Black Mosquito Star, would inevitably feel a kind of heartfelt support for the Holy Sun ceremony this time. Therefore, there was no suspense about the grand occasion. Although the ordinary demons could not go up the mountain to watch the ceremony at close range, they had surrounded the Black Mosquito Peak from all directions before sunrise. At a glance, there were at least hundreds of thousands of them. Even Yixian, who was caught off guard, was slightly shocked by this scene. Before he could react, the Grand Priest, Huigulu, who was already in place, had started the ritual of worshipping the heavens and ancestors. The ceremony had officially begun. The entire process was a little boring, but it was solemn and grand. Even the Black Mosquito 9 Stars leaders and vice-castellans, who had been forced to watch the ceremony and were originally disapproving of it, had bright lights in their eyes and they were excited. Among the 9 Stars leaders who were standing by the Black Mosquito 9 Stars leaders, and Vice-Black Mosquito 9 Stars leaders was dumbfounded. His mouth and his face was filled with astonishment. Translation: he was the Mosquito translation of 9 Stars eyes translation. Is words? Translation. Is star? Translation is translation is translation Is that translation? Is this translation? Is translation? Just at this moment, at the end of the sky above their heads, a series of thunderous roars suddenly burst out without warning, startling all the demon powerhouses who were immersed in the solemn atmosphere of the Holy Sun ceremony. Their faces stiffened slightly, and they all reflexively looked up. In their line of sight, the high atmosphere of the Black Mosquito 9 Stars was churning violently like boiling water due to the large amount of turbulent airflow. A huge space fleet was approaching at this moment. Although they were hovering outside the atmosphere, they were not far away. At least, they were definitely not at a safe distance that had no effect on the atmosphere of the Black Mosquito 9 Stars. This rude action was clearly a show of force. What was even more surprising was that the main flagship of this huge space fleet was a cosmic universe-level space fortress with a diameter of 20,000 meters. It was a huge object and it was shocking. Although space fortress was a general term, there were actually different levels. A space fortress with a diameter of 5,000 meters was a cosmic cloud-level space fortress, also known as a small fortress. Space fortresses with a diameter of 10,000 meters were cosmic-level space fortresses, also known as great fortresses. In addition, Yixian had seen a giant space fortress with a diameter of more than 10,000 meters in the Demon Guard 1 star dock. Those were two huge blocks with diameters of 20,000 meters. Space fortresses of this level were cosmic-level space fortresses. Of course, above cosmic-level space fortresses, there were cosmic-level space fortresses with diameters of 50,000 meters. Space fortresses with diameters of more than 50,000 meters were at least 100,000 meters. At this level, they could no longer be called space fortresses. Generally speaking, space fortresses with diameters of more than 100,000 meters were space fortresses. It was said that there were several space fortresses with diameters of up to 100,000 meters in the Divine Legacy clan's base camp, which was equivalent to 100 kilometers. There was even a super space fortress with a diameter of 1 million meters, which was equivalent to 1,000 kilometers. However, not to mention Yixian, even the Demon King Mo Wentian had probably never seen one with his own eyes. The main flagship of the fleet hovering outside the Black Mosquito star's atmosphere was a cosmic-level space fortress with a diameter of 20,000 meters. It was one of the two space fortresses that Yixian had seen in the Demon Guard 1 star dock back then. It was called the Demon King. It was probably named after the Demon King's noble status, which meant that he ruled over a star sector. Other than this Demon King, which was not much different from a small meteor, the entire royal fleet that had come all the way from the Demon King planet had 5 cosmic-level fortresses with diameters of 10,000 meters and 10 cosmic-level fortresses with diameters of 5,000 meters and 10 cosmic-level fortresses. There were also 100 stellar-level warships with diameters of 3,000 meters. Similarly, a huge fleet of cosmic-level space fortresses was more than enough to wipe out the entire Black Mosquito tribe, and it would be very easy for them to do so. Therefore, at this moment the entire fleet spread out outside the Black Mosquito Star's atmosphere and hovered high in the air. All of this could be clearly seen from the Black Mosquito Star's main continent below through the gaps in the Black Mosquito Star's atmosphere due to the fleet's sudden arrival. Because of this, on the Black Mosquito Star below, a large number of demon race experts in the various demon race cities on the continent raised their heads to look because they heard the commotion. This was especially so for the demon race experts who had gathered around the peak of the ancestral temple to watch the Holy Sun ceremony in the depths of the Black Mosquito Star main city. When they saw this scene, they were slightly startled. Soon their expressions changed and a large number of gasps could be heard. The news that the Black Mosquito ship's scout fortress had fallen into the hands of the human race had long spread. Although in terms of organizational structure, the Black Mosquito ship had always belonged to the frontline scout army that the demon race had sent to the edge of the third universe, the more than 10,000 demon race scouts in the fortress, including the small leader Nabashan who controlled the Black Mosquito ship, were all genuine members of the Black Mosquito tribe without exception. From this point of view, now that the Black Mosquito ship's scout fortress suddenly changed, there was a possibility that the Demon King would launch an iron-blooded investigation on the entire Black Mosquito tribe in his fury. Chapter 2995. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Wen Xing was bewildered. According to the normal procedure, there were still some steps to be taken in the Holy Sun ceremony, but they were just a complicated formality and did not have much practical significance. Now, with the arrival of the Imperial fleet, all the later steps could only be omitted. High Priest Griskel quickly announced the completion of the ceremony. The originally grand ceremony ended in a hurried manner with a strong start and a weak finish. In this regard, the wretched Mosquito Slayer, who originally hoped to show his face in this grand ceremony and steal the limelight, was rather disappointed. When he looked up at the enormous fleet high in the sky outside the atmosphere, a fierce light burst out of his eyes. He was clearly venting his anger. It was unknown where this guy got the courage to glare fiercely at such a huge fleet. However, to Yi Xian the ceremony ended in a rush. He was very happy. He did not have to continue dealing with it. To him this was just a formality. Although he heaved a sigh of relief in his heart, Yi Xian's expression instantly became incomparably gloomy. When he raised his head to look at the sky, the dissatisfaction in his eyes was even denser than the wretched mosquito butcher's overflowing resentment. They're trying to intimidate us before we even meet. Looks like they don't have good intentions. As Yi Xian muttered to himself, the dissatisfaction in his eyes gradually disappeared. However, a playful smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. He did not do anything else. He just stood on the peak square where the Black Mosquito Ancestral Temple was located with his hands behind his back. He lifted his head slightly and looked into the sky. At this moment, the Black Mosquito City Scout Commander Hong Zhan had already received orders from Zhuofengtai to lead a group of demon scouts to disperse the demon experts who had gathered around the Black Mosquito Peak to watch the ceremony. The Black Hole Realm higher-ups of the Black Mosquito tribe on the peak square in front of the ancestral temple stepped forward and quietly gathered behind Yi Xian. They were in an orderly formation. Even the great commander of the Black Mosquito tribe, Zhuofengtai, and the high priest Huegu were on Yi Xian's left and right, but they were clearly half a step behind him. Suddenly he looked over. Amongst the group of devil cultivator experts on the plaza at the peak of the Black Mosquito Ancestral Temple, Yi Xian was clearly the leader. Everyone else seemed to be following his lead. In this way, if one were to look at it from another perspective, this clearly represented the entire Black Mosquito tribe. Now Yi Xian was in charge. After all, at this moment, the group of Black Hole Realm experts on the plaza at the peak of the Black Mosquito Temple had completely included all of the core members of the Black Mosquito tribe's 10 great devil cultivators. Regarding this, Hao Fangfang and her father, Hao Deshuang, who didn't know the situation, had faces full of shock. They also followed the crowd and stood behind Yi Xian. However, the waves in their hearts were higher and higher, and they couldn't calm down for a long time. Both father and son realized that Yi Xian must have done something last night. However, no matter how hard they tried, they couldn't figure out the truth. Everything was too strange. At the same time, in the sky of the Black Mosquito Star, the entire royal fleet from the Demon Imperial City was still hovering outside the Black Mosquito Star's atmosphere. However, because all the warships and space fortresses were hovering, their energy consumption was reduced. Therefore, the rolling momentum of the vast atmosphere in the sky was gradually coming to a stop. Presumably, it would not be long before it returned to normal. However, the rolling of the atmosphere just now had caused a large amount of cosmic rays to enter the Black Mosquito star through the gaps in the atmosphere. These cosmic rays would have a certain effect on the plants of the Black Mosquito star, as well as some ordinary devil dwellers with no cultivation. This was clearly a warning and shock from the Devil King Mo Wen-Tian to the entire Black Mosquito tribe. From this, it could be seen how furious the Imperial City was when the Black Mosquito Scout Fortress was confirmed to have fallen into the hands of the human clan of the Third Universe. Soon as the rolling momentum of the atmosphere in the sky gradually came to a stop, the Imperial City fleet hovering outside the atmosphere could no longer be seen. However, more than 10 standard military patrol warships of the Demon Imperial City passed through the atmosphere at this moment and sped toward the Black Mosquito Peak, where Yi Xian and the Black Mosquito tribe's 10 stars were standing. These standard military patrol warships were about the same size as small private warships. They were only a few hundred meters long. However, at this moment, more than 10 of them had arrived at the same time. Obviously, many people had come. Ha ha ha. Looking at this formation, is today Zhang Wuji's Holy Sun ceremony? In that case, I've come at the right time. Very quickly, the dozen or so small patrol ships stopped at a low altitude in front of the peak of Black Mosquito Peak. The figure of the Imperial City's High Priest, Wen Xing, stepped out of the ship and entered the line of sight of Yi Xian and the others. Before he even arrived, his voice had already sounded out clearly. In addition to Wen Xing, the commander of the Demon Imperial Guards, Chanas, who commanded the entire Imperial fleet and was also in charge of the thorough investigation of the Black Mosquito Scout Fortress, had also appeared. He walked side by side with Wen Xing and was descending toward the Black Mosquito Peak. Then, the Demon Imperial Guards of the Imperial City poured out of the dozen patrol warships and quickly got into formation. At a glance, there were at least 1,000 of them, hovering at a low altitude in front of the small patrol warships. They imperceptibly emitted an extremely fierce killing intent. So it's High Priest Wen and Commander Cha from the Imperial City. Didn't you say that they would only arrive in a few days? Why didn't you inform me a few days in advance? I thought the human clan fleet had arrived and the enemy had arrived. Looking at Wen Xing and Chanas, who had already arrived in front of them and were descending towards the peak of the Black Mosquito Peak, Yi Xian didn't wait for Zhuofengtai and Grayskull to respond. He immediately greeted them with pun. This was clearly a hint. Originally, Huigu and Zhuofengtai were about to speak, but at this moment they both shut their mouths at the same time. They didn't look sideways as if Yi Xian was the one in charge of this place. Seeing this scene, Wen Xing and Chanas were both stunned, and a strong sense of suspicion surged in their eyes. In fact, Wen Xing's words just now seemed to be referring to Yi Xian, but his original intention was to say those words to Zhuofengtai and High Priest Huigu Lei of the Black Mosquito tribe. No matter how many demons there were in the Black Mosquito star, only Zhuofengtai and Huigu Lei were qualified to talk to him, the High Priest of the Imperial City, on such a formal occasion. However, the current situation was clearly not right. Zhang Wuji, who had just finished the ceremony and officially became the new Holy Son of the Black Mosquito tribe, strangely displayed an attitude that was superior to that of Zhuofengtai and Huigu Lei. Moreover, the two of them even looked submissive, as if they were willing to do so. Even the dozens of Black Hole Realm 10-star higher-ups of the Black Mosquito tribe behind the three were no exception. They were all like this. Wen Xing and Chanas naturally understood the significance of this scene, but this was too absurd. How could he have subdued the entire Black Mosquito tribe so quickly? Chapter 2996. Translator. Nyobo Studio Editor. Nyobo Studio Intrigue and Intrigue. Originally, Wen Xing had planned to exchange a few pleasantries with Zhuofengtai and Grey Bone, then find an opportunity to shift the topic to Yi Xian. Using his lazy nature and lack of diligence in cultivation as an excuse, he reprimanded Yi Xian in public. This could be considered as a small preparation for the matter of making a move against Yi Xian in the near future. However, at this moment, as the strange scene in front of him caused him to feel bewildered, Wen Xing immediately dispelled this idea. There must be a reason behind this abnormality. In his opinion, based on Yi Xian's strength and methods, The scene in front of him should not have happened no matter what. This was enough to prove that Yixian must have some kind of powerful method that he did not know about before. Based on Wenxing's scheming and cunning style, he obviously could not act rashly before he figured out all of this. After a round of pleasantries, Wenxing's eyes flashed quickly. He finally brought up the important matter and began to probe Yixian with his words. Zhang Wuji, it seems that you are quite popular in the Black Mosquito tribe. Not only do the great commander and the high priest support you, but even the entire Black Mosquito tribe's 10-star high-ranking officials are also. The smile on his face remained. Wenxing seemed to have casually mentioned it. As he spoke, his gaze slowly swept across the faces of the Black Mosquito tribe's experts that he had mentioned. There was clearly a sense of scrutiny in his eyes. Unfortunately, in the end he found nothing. Even if he were to use his mental power to carefully investigate the spirit source cores of the demon slaves present, Wenxing would definitely not be able to find any problems, let alone examine them with his naked eyes. Yixian's mental power had already reached the 6th level, which was the same as his own. Moreover, the slave seal was so mysterious that Wenxing had no chance at all. Only the 7th-grade Devil Emperor Mo Wentian, whose mental power surpassed Yixian's, would be able to do it himself. At this moment, as Wenxing quickly examined all the Black Mosquito 10 stars higher-ups present, he did not find any abnormalities. The suspicion in his heart instantly grew stronger, and a hint of disappointment flashed in his eyes. Even his words faintly revealed a hint of displeasure. Thinking back to those years, even when I was the high priest of the Black Mosquito tribe, the entire 10 stars higher-ups of the tribe were far from being so harmonious. Kid, you're good. Indeed, the younger generation will surpass us in time. So it's passable. Actually, it's not a big deal, it's just that. Yixian sneered in his heart, but he didn't show it on his face. Halfway through his sentence, he suddenly paused as if he was trying to keep Yixian in suspense. Completely subconsciously, Wenxing immediately followed up and asked, "So what?" As soon as this sentence left his mouth, he suddenly realized that he was a little too naive. This kid in front of him was so mischievous, how could he tell the truth and solve his doubts? Yixian was secretly pleased and quickly filled in the hole. He waved his hand and continued, "It's just that my character is too good, that's all. I can't help it. I've always been like this, winning people over with virtue." Between the words, it was obvious that he was insinuating that Wenxing's character was bad, and that he couldn't win people over with virtue. All the experts present, without exception, understood it. Huegulei, Zuofengtai, and the other demon slaves of Yixian were fine. No matter what they thought in their hearts, at least they didn't show any reaction on their faces. Hao Fangfang and Hao Deshuang, as well as some guards and ordinary priests of the Black Mosquito tribe who were trembling in fear, were so shocked by Yixian's words that their eyelids twitched. He dared to belittle the high priest of the imperial city in front of him, and in a situation where the high priest had the intention of denouncing him, all of this was too shocking. Hao Fangfang and Hao Deshuang felt that Yixian was getting stranger and stranger today, and they couldn't see through him. While the guards and priests of the ancestral temple were shocked, they quickly realized that the rumors were mostly true. If it wasn't for the fact that he was the illegitimate son of the Devil Emperor, this new holy son wouldn't dare to be so arrogant. As for Wenxing and Chanas beside him, they were obviously shocked by Yixian's words. For a moment, they were speechless and looked very embarrassed. Although they were furious, the two of them exchanged glances and suppressed their anger in the end. The more abnormal Yixian's performance was, the more intense the bewilderment in Wenxing and Chanas's hearts became. Now, before the truth was known, there was no possibility of them rashly falling out with him. Wenxing felt that Yixian was very unlucky, and at the same time he realized that Yixian was not easy to deal with. In terms of scheming and intelligence, even if he was not as good as Wenxing, he could be considered as a little fox. In this way, the follow-up tests were obviously meaningless. Fortunately, this matter was not urgent. During this period of time, the entire Imperial fleet would stay in the star area with the Black Mosquito Star as their temporary base camp to carry out a search and investigation. There would be plenty of opportunities to investigate this matter. Thinking of this, Wenxing's eyes flashed. He laughed and changed the topic. Yixian was not interested in chatting with him anymore, so he immediately sent a reminder signal to Zuofengtai, and Huegu lay through the connection between him and the slave seal. Soon the two of them took the initiative to speak up and catch up with Wenxing. While seemingly chatting as usual, they led Wenxing and Chanas to the left side hall of the ancestral temple, where they would stay for the night. The luncheon was very grand. After all, Chanas and Wenxing were the commander of the imperial fleet and the high priest of the imperial city. It was rare for them to come to the Black Mosquito tribe, so they naturally could not be rude. However, all of this was done by Zhuofengtai and Huegu Lei. Yixian was not interested in socializing. Even at the luncheon, he did not speak much. He just ate and drank as if there was no one around. On the surface, he seemed to be a small character, but the Black Mosquito tribe's 10 stars higher-ups, who were sitting at a few large tables, glanced at him from time to time. The atmosphere of the entire banquet hall was clearly focused on Yixian alone. Wenxing and Chanas exchanged glances. The doubts in their hearts were getting stronger and stronger. After the luncheon, Chanas left the Black Mosquito star and entered the magic drive, which was hovering outside the atmosphere. He immediately took away part of the fleet's forces. In addition to the magic drive, which had a diameter of 20,000 meters, there were 2 galaxy-level fortresses with a diameter of 10,000 meters, and 5 nebula-level fortresses with a diameter of 5,000 meters. A total of 8 space fortresses of various sizes were activated at the same time. They whizzed away rapidly and disappeared into the vast void of space outside the atmosphere of the Black Mosquito star in the blink of an eye. To everyone's surprise, the 8 bastions were heading straight for the wormhole that connected to the domain of the graveyard of the Third Universe. Chapter 2997. A famous burial. The Black Mosquito Bastion was the reason the Imperial fleet had come. That was why Chanas was leading 8 bastions of varying sizes away from the natural wormhole that led to the domain of the Fallen in the Third Universe. There was no doubt as to what his goal was. It was obvious that Chanas was planning to enter the natural wormhole and go to the domain of the graveyard of the Third Universe on the other side of the wormhole. There, he would search for the other bastions of the Demonkin Scout Corps and investigate the Black Mosquito thoroughly. At that time, not only would the fall of the Black Mosquito be confirmed, even the disappearance of the Black Wind would be discovered by Chanas. But that was not the main point. Most importantly, as soon as Chanas arrived in the domain of the buried domain, he would soon learn the truth. Before Yixian left the Graveyard Star region, news of Prince Xian's deeds had already spread. At the very least, it was like this on the Heavenly River planet. Almost everyone knew that the reason why Prince Xian was able to obtain such a huge amount of federal contribution points in such a short period of time was all because of the Devil Cultivator Scout Fortress. This was definitely not a secret. Back then, Yixian had released several thousand experts of the Federation from the bottom level of the Black Mosquito and the Black Wind Scout Fortresses. Although these people would never reveal Yixian's identity under normal circumstances because they had sworn an oath, it was not a problem at all if it was just to prove that they had been saved by a human expert. Chanas would learn about this as soon as he arrived in the domain of the graveyard. From this, he deduced that the fall and disappearance of the 2 scout fortresses, the Black Mosquito ship and the Black Wind ship, were in fact not done by the human government, but by someone called Prince Xian. Furthermore, not only had Prince Xian abducted the 2 bastions of the Demonkin Scout Corps, he'd even taken them into the wormhole and arrived at the First Universe's Demonkin starfield. This way, once Chanas returned, the entire Demonkin star zone would be turned upside down. Besides the Demonkin race that occupied this star zone, the Heaven's Legacy race's slave forces in other regions of the First Universe would most likely be sent over to assist in the search. The Demon Emperor definitely wouldn't dare to hide such a huge matter. What's more, Yixian was extremely suspicious that Chanas was a spy planted by the Tianji race in the Devil Emperor city. Even if the Devil Emperor didn't report Prince Xian's incident, Chanas would definitely expose it. Considering that Prince Xian was one of the princes from the human race's technological faction's Immortal Dynasty who was conducting an ultimate trial, the value of his identity was absolutely shocking. When the time came, in order to find Prince Xian, even the Tianji clan would most likely send some of their clan's forces to the Demon Fiend Star Zone. In short, once the matter of Prince Xian was exposed, the Demonkin Star Zone would be in chaos. The eyes of the entire First Universe would be focused on them. Under such circumstances, no matter how well Yixian hid, the chances of him being exposed would still increase. After realizing this, A strong sense of crisis instantly enveloped Yixian's entire mind. Unfortunately, he was completely powerless to stop all of this, let alone change anything. The only thing he could do was to act as cautiously as possible after Chana's return to avoid making mistakes and exposing himself. Due to this consideration, Yixian had no choice but to change his strategy on how to deal with the high priest of the imperial city, Wenxing. His original plan was to infuriate Wenxing step by step and force him to impulsively attack him in public. At that time, Yixian would use the high-ranking members of the Black Mosquito 10 Stars as his slaves to trigger the resistance of all the experts of the Black Mosquito tribe's 10 major demon fiend tribes. In this way, the conflict between him and Wenxing would be completely exposed, and the secret schemes would be meaningless. On the surface, Yixian, a small new holy son, seemed to be insignificant. However, the Black Mosquito tribe was one of the 10 great tribes of the Demon Cultivator tribe, so it was no small matter. Once the matter was blown up and Yixian didn't make any serious mistakes, then Wenxing would be afraid of taking action and take the initiative to find a way to settle the matter. However, this method was obviously not suitable now. If he did that, the commotion would be too great. A newly appointed holy son was actually able to cause the entire tribe to step forward and fully support him after a conflict broke out between him and the high priest of the imperial city. This was really a little too monstrous, and it would attract countless unnecessary gazes. As long as the matter of Prince Xian didn't come to an end, Yixian could only keep a low profile as much as possible. If he attracted too much attention, he would be asking for trouble. Of course, it wasn't that he hadn't thought of killing him or using a slave seal to subdue him. However, after thinking about it for a while, these two methods were quickly rejected. Subduing him with a slave seal wasn't very likely. Not only was Wenxing a supreme entity at the Grotto Heaven realm, but he also had a grade 6 source core, which was the same as Yixian's. Even if he got a grade 11 or grade 12 slave seal and successfully planted it in Wenxing's body and smoothly completed the process of enslaving his source core, it would be hard to guarantee that nothing would happen after a long time. After all, the mind power Yixian used to condense the slave seal was at the same level as Wenxing's own mind power. Besides, Wenxing was a supreme Grotto Heaven realm high priest of the imperial city, so he definitely possessed a lot of secret mind techniques. While Yixian's mind power source core completed its 6th transformation and evolved into a grade 7 source core, using a slave seal to subdue Wenxing was basically impossible. The risk was too great. Killing him was even more out of the question. Wenxing's illustrious status was obvious, and he had come for Yixian. If he died unexpectedly, Yixian would be the first person to be suspected and scrutinized. No one else would be able to do that except for him. I can't kill him, but I can't subdue him either. Don't tell me I can only let him do as he pleases? As these thoughts flashed through Yixian's mind one after another, he found himself in a dilemma. He furrowed his brows and shook his head gloomily. Killing Wenxing isn't difficult. The difficult part is finding a method that are completely unrelated to me. This fellow is so crafty and slippery that normal schemes simply can't work on him. This really makes me speechless. This matter has to be settled before Chana's returns. Otherwise, Chana's? Halfway through his sentence, Yixian suddenly had a flash of inspiration. His eyes lit up as if he had suddenly grasped something. Then he clapped his hands and laughed heartily. After going around in circles, I finally realized that the best strategy to deal with this old fellow was actually something he came up with himself. Ha ha ha. Achoo. As Yixian clapped his hands and laughed heartily, Wenxing, who had just sent someone to summon the Black Mosquito tribe's high priest Huigulii, suddenly sneezed in a room on the left side of the ancestral temple. Chapter 2998. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation First Universe Arrest Order Universe 3. In the vast territory of the 10,000 Luo Federation Human Races Science and Technology Factions Immortal Dynasty. Ever since Yixian had left Universe 3 and entered the natural wormhole that led to the first universe in the core of the Graveyard Domain, he had gone to the Demon Domain at the edge of the first universe. Rumors about Prince Xian had spread to one star zone after another in a short period of time. By now, not only had the Human Races Science and Technology faction and the Cultivation faction in Universe 3 known about this matter, but even the other races of the Federation in Universe 2 were aware of this matter and were discussing it incessantly. In particular, in the Heavenly River planet that Prince Xian had chosen to register as an interstellar mercenary of the Federation during this ultimate trial, all kinds of rumors about Prince Xian had spread to almost every corner of the planet. In this place, if one didn't know who Prince Xian was and what he had done, to put it in a slightly exaggerated manner, one would be too embarrassed to greet others when they went out. Although the heaven, earth, and human rankings of the Federation's contribution ranking could be browsed and checked at any one of the 10,000 Luo Federation's administrative planets, there were still a large number of Federation experts who had come to the Heavenly River planet due to its fame. They went to the Heavenly River planet's Federation Affairs platform, walked into the hall that dealt with interstellar mercenary affairs, and raised their heads to look at the Earth ranking. The Earth ranking contained the experts who ranked 101st to 1000th in the entire 10,000 Luo Federation's Federation contribution points. Yi Xian had rushed from the human ranking to the bottom of the Earth ranking in a short period of time. Today, his ranking on the Earth ranking was still the same as before. Even the punctuation mark hadn't changed. Earth ranking 999th. Yi Xian, 8th level meteor state. Interstellar mercenary serial number the 131488080. Current Federation contribution points 176878943, 30 million. Many experts in the current 10,000 Luo Federation could write out this string of information and data with their eyes closed. However, every day, a large number of experts from the Federation still came from outside of the graveyard domain. Nobody knew whether it was just to see what the place Prince Xian had registered as an interstellar mercenary, or to verify it with their own eyes, to see if Prince Xian's contribution points and data was as rumored, and hadn't changed for a very long time. Slowly, all kinds of rumors began to spread. Some people said that Prince Xian had already fallen. Everything related to his contribution points, cultivation data, and so on had been frozen at the moment before he fell. Some said that even if Prince Xian hadn't died, he must have been captured and imprisoned by the demon scouts the Heavenly Legacy race had sent to the depths of the domain of the graveyard. Someone even said with certainty that Prince Xian had saved him from a demon fortress. At the same time, a large number of experts from the Federation had also been saved. To be honest, all of them had contributed to Prince Xian translation. Federation contribution points Prince Xian had earned in such a short time. This person also said that he was the last one to escape from the 10,000 Luo hell at the bottom of the space fortress. As soon as he stepped out of a spatial door in the shape of a black curtain of light, the passage to the 10,000 Luo hell was completely closed. The moment he stepped into the spatial door, Prince Xian's shouts from the 10,000 Luo hell behind him were still ringing in his ears. In short, Prince Xian had definitely not been able to escape. He was still locked up. The last statement could be said to be conclusive, but perhaps because it was too detailed, not many people believed it at first, and the Everlasting Dynasty didn't even bother to pay attention to it. However, as more and more voices appeared, this matter was gradually confirmed. However, the everlasting star of the Everlasting Dynasty still remained silent. It was at this moment that Chanas arrived. As soon as he had been in the heart of the domain of the falling domain, he had established communication with the other 8 bastions of the Demon Scout Corps and summoned them to him. Soon after, with the arrival of the 8 Demon Scout fortresses, all the rumors about Prince Xian immediately reached Chanas's ears. Just as Yi Xian had guessed, Chanas was immediately overjoyed after being stunned for a moment. He had thought that the human race had seized the Black Mosquito ship and successfully infiltrated the First Universe. Now it seemed that the Black Mosquito ship and the Black Wind ship had been abducted by a descendant of the human race. Moreover, this person was now in the demon fortress, isolated and without help. This was the descendant of the royal family of the Eternal Dynasty in the human race's technology camp. Moreover, his reputation among the human race's experts was clearly not to be underestimated. If they could capture him alive, it would definitely be a great achievement. With this kind of ecstasy, Chanas embarked on his return journey the next day. He turned around and rushed straight into the wormhole in the universe. The 4 space fortresses of the Demon Fortress also left with him. If he wanted to claim credit from his master, the Heavenly Fate Tribe, he had to prepare all the evidence and witnesses. However, as soon as Chanas left, The Eternal Dynasty in the human race's technology camp learned that Chanas had come to the graveyard domain but had hurriedly turned around and left the next day through a traitor of the Demon Fortress who had been bribed and planted in the Demon Fortress. Even the reason behind Chanas' sudden arrival had been found out by this demon spy, and he had described it in detail in the intelligence report that afternoon. In the depths of the Eternal Imperial City on the Eternal Star, in a palace, the mournful cries of a woman suddenly sounded. Xian'er, my Xian. So it's all true. You are really trapped in the demon fortress of the first universe. Alone and without help. Woo. Xian'er, hang in there a little longer. I won't leave you behind. With your current reputation and my efforts, even if it's the ultimate trial, so what? You seized 2 demon fortresses by yourself, and then killed your way into the first universe alone. Even your father didn't have such outstanding military achievements before he succeeded the throne. You should have passed the trial a long time ago. This time, let's see who dares to use the trial as an excuse to stop me from rescuing you. In the first universe, near the entrance of the natural wormhole that connected to the third universe, whoosh, whoosh. A total of 12 demon fortress of different sizes shot out of the wormhole and landed in the depths of the demon fortress at the edge of the first universe. Chanas had returned to the Black Mosquito Star immediately. At the same time, increase the power of the Demon King's star network to the highest level. Search for the signal of the Heavenly Fate Star Network at all costs. Contact us immediately if you find anything. In the main hall of the Magic King Fortress on the top floor, as the order to search and connect to the Heaven's Legacy Race's star network was issued, Chanas immediately fell into a beautiful fantasy, grinning as he softly muttered, I should be able to contact the Heavenly Fate Star before returning to the Black Mosquito Star, so that old man won't take my credit. Chapter 2999. Translator. Nayarbo Studio Editor. Nayarbo Studio. Famous in the 3 dimensions, only the overlord of the first universe, the Tianji clan, had the right to issue a wanted order from the first universe. Moreover, it was issued by the leader of the Tianji clan personally. Only then could it be effective. Once it was issued, it could travel through the entire universe of the first universe. Countless slave clans that were subordinate to the Tianji clan had to actively and unconditionally cooperate with it. Ever since the leader of the Tianji clan killed Xingbo, the human race's technological pioneer who created the Tianji clan, and betrayed the human race, until today this kind of arrest order with the words, First Universe, added to it had only appeared less than 10 times. Every sudden appearance of a wanted order from the first universe represented the impending turmoil that would engulf the entire universe of the first universe. Even the human race that occupied the third universe, as well as the various clans in the second universe that formed the Wanluo Federation with the human race, would sometimes be involved. In the past, there had been several bounty notices in the first universe. Those who were listed on the wanted list were all important figures of the human race or the Myriad Sifting Federation. Regardless of whether this person was famous or unknown before the bounty notice was issued, once his name appeared on the first universe bounty notice issued by the Tianji clan, then this person would definitely be. In life, his name traveled across the universe, and after death he would leave his mark in the annals of history. This was definitely not an exaggeration but a fact. It was said that in a few powerful clans in the second universe's Wanluo Federation, there were several old monsters. Many years ago they had made a bet. These old monsters would all enter the first universe and do whatever they wanted to see who had the greatest ability to make the leader of the Tianji clan issue a wanted order from the first universe in a fit of anger. The final result was very embarrassing. These old monsters all failed and left the first universe dejectedly. It was said that one of the old monsters was so cruel that he even exterminated an entire slave clan of the Tianji clan. However, when the news reached Di's ears, he waved his hand and threw it to the back of his mind. He didn't care at all. If not for this, Chanas wouldn't have been so agitated. Although he wasn't on the wanted list, if he could successfully get a wanted list from the first universe, his name would resound throughout the first universe as the #1 mastermind behind the creation of this wanted list. At that time, many people might not know who the commander of the Demon Imperial Guards in the Demon Imperial City was, but they would know who the mastermind behind the arrest warrant for Prince Xian of the human race in the first universe was. It was said that luck could not be stopped when it came. That was what Chanas was feeling now. As the overlord of the first universe, the Tianji clan could send out signals from the Tianji star net that could cover the entire first universe. However, the demon domain was located at the edge of the first universe. Therefore, the main Tianji star net signal here was not very strong. Most of the time it could not be found. But this time, not long after Chanas gave the order, the Magic King Fortress found the star web signal of the Tianji main web and successfully connected with it. Immediately after that, Chanas worked hard to launch an exaggerated report that was almost jumping up and down. In the end, even he himself was a little doubtful about whether this Prince Xian that he had described was too much of a deification. What if he overreached himself and ended up making a fool of himself? With this anxiety, Chanas led the 11 space fortresses behind him. After half a day, they finally arrived at the Black Mosquito Star. At this time, the final result of the Tianji clan's handling of this matter finally arrived. There were 2 messages sent back to the Demon King. One was a secret commendation order that was not made public. It would be destroyed after reading it. Even the star net signal that transmitted this secret order would be completely destroyed. Only the central hub of the Tianji clan's star net would have an archive. The other message was that Chanas, as the mastermind behind the scenes, had successfully gotten a wanted list from the first universe. The wanted person listed on it was Prince Xian of the human race. Since it was a top-level order to travel through the entire universe, it was naturally impossible that only the Demon King Fortress that Chanas was in received it. At the same time, all the slave races of the Tianji clan in the first universe, including those on the Demon King planet, received the exact same wanted list. Even the human race and the other races of the Myriad Luo Federation received this news one after another through certain special channels in the next half a day. In less than half a day, the 3 great planes of the universe were completely shaken. From this moment on, the hottest topic of discussion in almost every galaxy with a cultivator in the universe was this Prince Xian, who had been miserably listed as a fugitive. Yi Xian's name shook the 3 universes overnight. However, it was with an awkward identity that even he was depressed about and didn't want to admit. After the Tianji clan's wanted list was sent to the entire first universe, only 6 to 8 hours later, some of the higher-ups of the human race in the third universe had already received news of this matter. There were several such existences in the undying planet of the human race's technological faction alone. Through them the news quickly spread. No one tried to cover it up. Firstly, there was no need to. Secondly, it was impossible to cover it up. It was only a matter of time before such a shocking secret spread throughout the 3 universes. The undying planet of the Heavenly Underworld Empire, where the capital of the Heavenly Underworld Empire was located. Ever since Yi Xian had completely disappeared from the Fallen Star region, and there were no more clues, Xinyuan Ziying had been disheartened and gloomily returned to the imperial capital, Heavenly Underworld Star. During this period of time, she had been cooped up in the Xinyuan clan and rarely went out. She had also received news of the Tianji clan's wanted list issued against Yi Xian. At this moment she was completely stunned. Her mouth was slightly open as she stood there dumbfounded, as if she had been petrified. After a long time the purplish warbler sighed faintly. She shook her head and smiled bitterly. This misunderstanding is getting worse and worse. It's to the extent that it has shocked the 3 universes. I wonder what kind of situation it will be when the truth is revealed in the future. However, at least we have a clue as to the whereabouts of Brother Yi and that girl Lulu. Furthermore, with Prince Xian's reputation in the entire Myriad Luo Federation, whether or not the Undying Planet believes that Brother Yi is Prince Xian, as the Tianji clan's wanted list spreads throughout the 3 universes, the Undying royal family will definitely take action. Otherwise, they won't be able to convince the public and cause criticism. In the end, the foundation of the royal family will be shaken. It seems that it's time for me to depart. I'll wait in the graveyard star domain. If nothing unexpected happens, the fleet of the undying planet of the royal family will depart soon.